Have you ever noticed how humanity's greatest catastrophes rarely begin with dramatic explosions or monumental decisions? They emerge silently, almost imperceptibly, through something far more insidious and seemingly harmless, a small lie. Perhaps you yourself have felt that strange sensation that something fundamental has been lost in our world, a feeling that we are navigating through an increasingly artificial reality where truth has become a luxury that few can afford to seek. You wake up in the morning, check your phone, consume hundreds of pieces of information in just a few minutes, and a quiet voice in your mind whispers, "Is any of this real? Am I living my own life? Or simply responding to carefully orchestrated stimuli?" This uneasiness you feel is not paranoia or excessive pessimism. It is your most primitive and wise intuition, recognizing that we are living in the midst of the greatest reality engineering experiment ever conducted in human history, and it all began with a lie so small that we barely noticed when it was planted. The story I need to share with you today is not about elaborate conspiracies or secret plans for world domination. It is about something much more subtle and, for that very reason, much more dangerous. How humanity learned to lie to itself so sophisticatedly that we lost the ability to distinguish between what is construction and what is discovery, between what we create and what we find. Imagine for a moment the first person who decided to tell a small lie about something seemingly insignificant. Perhaps it was a merchant 5,000 years ago who slightly exaggerated the purity of his gold, or a scribe who minimally altered a record to favor his employer. That specific lie did not cause the end of the world, but it planted a seed that would grow for millennia until it became the most destructive force our species has ever known. The ability to construct entirely fictional realities that become more convincing than reality itself. To understand how we reached the point where we live today, we need to return to the exact moment when our species crossed an invisible but irreversible line. It was when we discovered that the stories we tell about ourselves can be more powerful than the facts about ourselves. For hundreds of thousands of years, human beings lived in small groups where survival depended on accurate information about the environment: where to find water, which plants were poisonous, how to predict climate changes. Lying in this context was literally lethal. But as we developed more complex societies, we discovered something extraordinary. Certain lies, when collectively accepted, could create functional realities. The concept of money is a consensual lie that enables mass cooperation. The idea of nations is a shared fiction that organizes billions of people. Religions are imagined narratives that give meaning to suffering and death. The problem was not in the lies themselves, but in what happened when we stopped recognizing them as human constructions and began treating them as absolute discoveries about the nature of reality. When a society forgets that its most sacred truths are human creations, it loses the ability to question them, modify them, or abandon them when they become dysfunctional. And that is exactly what happened to us. We began to worship our own creations as if they were immutable natural laws. And that was the small lie that planted the seeds of our current collapse. The illusion that our mental constructions are objective discoveries about how the world really works. The first major symptom of this process appeared when we developed economic systems based on the premise that infinite growth is possible on a finite planet. This was not just a lie about mathematics or physics. It was a lie about the very nature of reality. But we told it with such conviction, wrapped it in such sophisticated language, supported it with such complex models, that we forgot it was a human construction and not a natural law. Entire generations of economists, politicians, and business leaders grew up genuinely believing that this lie was truth and built all their decisions upon it. The result was a system that consumes the planet exponentially while proclaiming that this is not only inevitable, but desirable. The second major manifestation was our relationship with technology. We created machines to serve us, but then invented the story that technological progress is an autonomous force that we must passively accept. We developed algorithms to organize information, but then accepted the fiction that these algorithms are neutral and objective, when in truth, they are loaded with all the biases, limitations, and objectives of those who created them. We built social networks to connect people, but then embraced the lie that business models based on addiction and psychological manipulation are the inevitable price of connectivity. At each step, we forgot that we were the creators of these technologies and began to behave as if they were natural forces to which we must adapt. The third manifestation was even more subtle, our relationship with information. For most of human history, access to information was limited, and this created a natural scarcity that gave value to knowledge. But when we developed the capacity to produce and distribute information virtually, without limit, something unexpected happened. Instead of becoming wiser, we became more confused. Instead of having access to truth, we created an environment where all versions of truth compete for the same mental space, and the one that wins is not necessarily the most accurate, but the most attractive, the most confirming of our existing prejudices, the most capable of generating emotional engagement. At this point in our conversation, I need to pause and ask you something directly. When was the last time you were absolutely certain about something important? When was the last time you knew, without a shadow of doubt, that significant information was completely true? If you stopped to think and realized that this sensation of certainty has become increasingly rare in your life, you are not alone in this experience. Many of us carry a silent anxiety about living in a world where we can no longer clearly distinguish between truth and fiction, between reality and construction, between facts and narratives. If this resonates with you, share in the comments. I feel uncertainty about reality when. Your honesty can help others realize that we are not alone in this sensation of existential drift that characterizes our times. What makes our current situation particularly dangerous is not that we are living with lies, something humanity has always done, but that we have developed technologies capable of making these lies indistinguishable from reality. Artificial intelligence can now create texts, images, videos, and audio that are impossible to distinguish from authentic material. We can simulate anyone saying anything so convincingly that even experts cannot detect the fabrication. This means we are entering an era where the distinction between true and false becomes technically irrelevant because both can be produced with the same quality and distributed at the same speed. But the real collapse is not in the technologies themselves. It is in how our human mind responds to this environment. Our brain evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in contexts where false information was rare and easily detectable. We do not have natural mechanisms to process a constant flow of information that may or may not be real, created by people who may or may not exist, with objectives that may or may not be aligned with our well-being. The result is chronic cognitive overload that forces us to take increasingly primitive mental shortcuts. We begin to believe information not because it is true, but because it is comfortable. Not because it is accurate, but because it confirms what we already thought. Not because it makes us wiser, but because it makes us feel better about our existing choices. This is the small lie that is causing our collapse. The belief that we can navigate this new information environment using the same mental mechanisms we used when information was scarce and verifiable. We continue pretending that our intuition about truth and falsehood still works, when in reality it has been completely overwhelmed by the sophistication of informational manipulation techniques. We continue pretending that we can distinguish between reliable and unreliable sources, when in reality the tools for simulating reliability have become so advanced that this distinction has lost practical meaning. The collapse we are experiencing is not just economic, political, or environmental. It is an epistemological collapse. We are losing our collective ability to distinguish between what we know and what we think we know, between what is real and what is constructed to appear real. When a civilization loses this capacity, it can no longer make rational decisions about its future because it can no longer correctly assess its present situation. It is like trying to navigate a ship when all the instruments show different information and there is no way to know which one is functioning correctly. Consider what happened to our ability to have productive conversations about important issues. 40 years ago, people with different political perspectives could still agree on basic facts and debate interpretations and solutions. Today, people living in the same country, speaking the same language, consuming what appear to be the same information sources, can have completely incompatible versions of the most fundamental events of their time. They are not simply disagreeing about opinions, they are living in parallel realities where the basic facts are different. This is not the result of greater political polarization, as we often assume. It is the result of an informational environment where different groups can construct completely different versions of reality using information that appears equally credible. When this happens, the very idea of objective truth begins to disintegrate, and politics becomes not a discussion about how to interpret shared reality, but a competition between different versions of reality. The most devastating consequence of this process is that we are losing our collective ability to learn from experience. Learning requires the ability to distinguish between attempts that worked and attempts that failed, between predictions that were confirmed and predictions that proved incorrect. But when we live in an environment where any outcome can be interpreted as confirmation of any theory, where any evidence can be dismissed as manipulation, and any source can be labeled as unreliable, the process of collective learning becomes impossible. Look at what happened with our response to climate change. For decades, scientific evidence consistently pointed in the same direction, but our culture developed alternative narratives so sophisticated that they managed to create genuine doubt about issues where solid scientific consensus exists. The result was not simply inadequate policy, but a situation where different groups interpret the same climate events as confirmation of completely opposite theories. When this happens, the very experience of reality loses its capacity to teach. The same pattern repeated in our response to pandemics, economic crises, technological developments, and practically any significant collective challenge. In each case, our response capacity was hindered, not primarily by resource limitations or technical knowledge, but by our inability to agree on the basic nature of the problem we were facing. This is the true dimension of the collapse. We are not just facing difficult problems, we are losing our collective ability to recognize and learn from problems. And this is happening precisely when we face challenges that require unprecedented global coordination. Climate change, artificial intelligence development, planetary resource management, nuclear conflict prevention, all these challenges require billions of people to agree on basic facts and cooperate on long-term solutions. But we are trying to face these challenges using decision-making systems that have been completely compromised by our toxic informational environment. The irony is that we have more access to accurate information than any previous generation in human history. Data about climate change, global poverty, technological developments, security risks, practically any topic relevant to important political decisions are widely available and can be verified by anyone with internet access. But having access to information became irrelevant when we lost our collective ability to distinguish between accurate information and attractive information. What makes this situation even more complex is that we cannot simply return to a previous state. The technologies that created this problem also created genuine benefits that we do not want to lose. The same internet that enables mass disinformation also democratizes access to knowledge. The same algorithms that can manipulate our emotions can also connect isolated people and provide vital resources to marginalized communities. The same technologies that make it possible to fabricate false evidence also make it possible to detect corruption and document injustices. We are not dealing with a simple problem where we can identify obvious villains and clear heroes. We are dealing with a situation where the tools that empower us also make us vulnerable, where technologies that expand our capabilities also amplify our limitations. It is a situation that requires a type of wisdom that our species is still learning to develop, the wisdom to create and use powerful tools without being dominated by them. The small lie that initiated our current collapse was the belief that we could develop transformative technologies without fundamentally transforming our way of thinking about reality, truth, knowledge, and collective decision-making. We assumed we could add layers of technical sophistication to human civilization without modifying the basic mechanisms of how we determine what is real and what is important. This assumption proved catastrophically incorrect, but recognizing this does not lead us to despair. In fact, it leads us to an extraordinary opportunity. For the first time in history, we have the necessary tools to create systems of information, verification, collective decision-making, and global coordination that are adequate to the challenges we face. We can develop technologies that amplify our capacity to distinguish truth from fiction instead of obscuring that distinction. We can create institutions that promote evidence-based collaboration instead of narrative-based competition. We can educate people to navigate the modern informational environment instead of being manipulated by it. The key is recognizing that this requires conscious and deliberate transformation. We cannot simply wait for problems to solve themselves or for other people to find solutions. Each of us needs to develop new skills for evaluating information, new practices for verifying sources, new habits for distinguishing between what we know and what we assume. And most importantly, we need to develop new forms of conversation and collaboration that work even when people have very different perspectives on complex issues. This means learning to distinguish between questions where clear evidence exists and questions where reasonable interpretations can diverge. It means developing epistemic humility, the ability to recognize the limits of our own knowledge and modify our opinions when confronted with better evidence. It means learning to collaborate with people who have different values than ours on problems that affect all of us. The transformation we need is not technical, it is cultural. We need to develop a culture that values accuracy over convenience, evidence over confirmation, collaboration over domination, learning over certainty. And this is not something that can be imposed from outside. It needs to emerge from our own collective choice to prioritize wisdom over power. The future of human civilization depends on our ability to make this transition consciously and rapidly. We do not have the luxury of waiting for future generations to solve these problems, because the challenges we face have timelines that cannot accommodate decades of confusion and conflict. Climate change, superintelligent artificial intelligence development, planetary resource management, all these issues require wise decisions in the coming years, not in the coming centuries. But there is reason for optimism. When our species faces existential challenges, it has a remarkable capacity to evolve rapidly. We developed agriculture when we faced food scarcity. We developed medicine when we faced devastating diseases. We developed communication technologies when we needed to coordinate global efforts. Now we need to develop informational wisdom when we face the risk of being dominated by our own creations. If these reflections resonated with your own perceptions about the world we are creating together, if you recognized in your own experience some of the patterns we discussed today, I invite you to join a community of people who are committed to this necessary transformation. By subscribing to this channel, you will connect with thousands of people who share the conviction that we can navigate these challenges with wisdom, that we can create technologies that serve us instead of dominating us, that we can build a civilization that honors both our capacity for innovation and our need for truth. We are not offering simple answers to complex problems, but a space for honest reflection and constructive collaboration that these times demand. Join us to continue this essential conversation about how we can consciously evolve toward a future worth creating. The small lie that began our collapse was the belief that we could transform the world without transforming ourselves. The great truth that can initiate our recovery is the recognition that every external transformation requires corresponding internal transformation, and that we have the capacity to make this evolution consciously. The collapse we are experiencing is not the end of our story. It is the end of a chapter in our story and the beginning of our opportunity to consciously write the next chapter. The choice of how this story will continue is, as it has always been, in our hands.
Darwin is the kind of prophet of sexual liberation. If I think about the liberation of gay people, of LGBTQ people, then if you dig underneath, you eventually find Darwin. For centuries upon centuries, gay people were persecuted and oppressed because of this mythological idea about sex, that sex was created by God for the purpose of procreation. And if you use sex for anything else, you're sinning against the purpose of the thing, so you must be punished. And then Darwin came, and Darwin said, in biology, there are no purposes. Nothing has any purpose in biology. In biology, there are only causes.
Yuval, thank you so much for coming to Keio University.
Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here.
We only have 30 minutes, so I'm going to bombard you with questions.
Absolutely.
So first question to you. When I assumed the position of the president of Keio University, let's say 4 years ago, the university library set up a shelf displaying must-read books recommended by president. And your book, 21 Lessons, occupied the center of the shelf.
Thank you.
That was 6 years ago. You published your 21 Lessons, and there you mentioned 3 big global threats. 1, nuclear warfare, of course including Putin's Russia, and 2, uncontrolled advancement of the biotechnology, including genome editing affecting humans itself, and 3, IT or information networks and AI. In a way, it is unchecked. So those are the 3 threats you mentioned. But for Nexus, you concentrated on IT networks, information networks, and AI only. Could you explain to me the reason behind this?
Well, if you compare AI and biotechnology, the most obvious thing is that AI just moves so much faster. Biotechnology can also change the world in a dramatic way, but it takes much, much longer because biology is much slower. Like if you make a change to the human genome, let's say to the genome of a human baby, and you want to know what the effects are and how to make an even bigger change in the future, you need to wait 20, 30, 40 years to see what is the impact of the new genetic material, the new genetic code on human behavior, human intelligence, human psychology. So a generation in biotechnology, when it comes to humans, is maybe 20 or 30 years. In AI, it could be just a few days. Digital evolution is moving millions of times faster than organic evolution. So without belittling the potential dangers and also opportunities of biotechnology, AI is just much, much faster. And with regard, when comparing AI, say, to the threat of nuclear war, here the reason to focus on AI are actually two reasons. First of all, nuclear war has no upside. So it has no supporters. Everybody, it's a huge, huge threat, especially in today's world, when we see that countries like Russia are just completely disregarding the biggest taboos of the international system. Since 1945, the biggest taboo of the international system was that a strong country cannot just invade and try to conquer and destroy a weaker country. And now this is broken. So the danger is huge, but at least everybody understands the danger. There are no winners in a nuclear war. With AI, it's a much more complicated challenge because there is a huge positive potential, and people find it very difficult to understand what the threats are. Ever since the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it was at least clear to humans what is the danger of nuclear technology. You don't need long explanations. With AI, it's difficult to grasp the danger because it's really an alien threat. The key problem with AI is not that it is evil. It's not evil. The key problem is that it is alien. It is an intelligence which could be superhuman in many ways, but it's not human, it's not organic. A lot of people ask, when will AI reach human-level intelligence? The answer is never, because it's not like us at all. It's like asking, when will airplanes reach bird-level flight? Never. Airplanes are just not like birds. They fly in a different way. So AI will surpass human intelligence, but it will be inherently alien. So it's very difficult to predict how it will develop and what the consequences will be. I'll say one more thing, and that's maybe the most important thing for everybody to understand about AI is that it is not a tool, it is an agent. It's the first technology we have ever created which is an agent and not a tool. An atom bomb or a nuclear reactor, the peaceful nuclear reactor that produces electricity, this is a tool in our hands. We decide what to do with it. Humans decide, we will use nuclear technology to produce electricity and not to destroy city. We make the decision. The reactor itself cannot make any decision. And of course, it cannot invent the next generation of reactors or of bombs. Only humans, until now, could make decisions and could invent new ideas. AI is the first technology that can do that without our help, without our intervention. AI can make decisions by itself. An AI weapon doesn't need human beings to tell it what to do. It can decide by itself what to bomb. And AI can even invent new weapons and new military strategies. It has, again, enormous positive potential. It can invent new medicines, new treatments for cancer. It has enormous negative potential. So this is why I chose to focus in this book only on the history of information technology, because I think at the present moment, it's the biggest challenge we face. Actually, in many ways, it's the biggest challenge that humanity faced in its history, because for thousands of years, we rule the planet, nothing on Earth could compete with us in intelligence, in the ability to invent new things. Now there is something on the planet, there is something on Earth, which very soon, maybe within a few years, will surpass us in intelligence, will be able to make decisions about our lives, will be able to invent new everything from medicines to weapons. And that's the biggest challenge.
You just said that maybe in a few years, but as early as 2015, you published a book, Homo Deus, History of Tomorrow, or Future. There you also warned and actually concentrated on information technology, information networks. How is your thought right now compared to your thought, let's say 2015, when you wrote Homo Deus? It's been 10 years.
Yeah,
you started as a historian and medieval military experts, and now you're focusing on, information networks and AI. Could you compare these, your development in past 10 years?
Yeah, I think 10 years ago when I wrote Homo Deus, all this talk about, very few people were talking about AI at the time. You had some people of course, in the computer science departments. You had people in the leading corporations, like Google and Microsoft, who already understood what was happening. And you had a few philosophers like Nick Bostrom, who published Superintelligence in 2014. But when I wrote Homo Deus, it felt like, we are talking about something that maybe will happen in hundreds of years, some philosophical speculations with very little immediate practical implications for our lives. Now it's all around us, and the pace of development is simply astounding. Already back then there were people like Ray Kurzweil also, who said that there will be AGI, artificial general intelligence, able to surpass human beings in all fields, not just a narrow field like playing chess or driving a car, but in all fields. They say by the end of the 2020s, by 2029. And even to me, when I read what Ray Kurzweil wrote, I thought, he's exaggerating. I can't be by 2029. Now Ray Kurzweil is still saying 2029, and he's considered one of the more conservative thinkers. Like you listen to the people who had the development effort in corporations in the US, in China. They were talking within a year, within 5 years, we'll have AGI. So it's sped up dramatically. The other thing is that all hopes of regulating this, of reaching some kind of agreement about this, seem now extremely naive. Certainly since the last US elections, I think really all hope of reaching a global agreement on how to manage the risk of AI development is gone. The big paradox of the AI revolution, I think at the heart of the AI revolution, there is a big paradox. And it's a paradox of trust. When you talk with the people who lead the AI revolution, the people who run companies like OpenAI, like Microsoft, like Tencent, like Baidu, when you talk with the leading politicians, I ask them two questions always.
Okay.
The first question I ask is, why are you moving so fast? Okay, yes, I understand there is enormous positive potential, but there are also risks. Let's slow down a little to give human society the time. Humans are extremely adaptive creatures. We can adapt to the AI age, but we just need time. Just give us a bit more time. And they all say the same thing. We understand there are huge risks as big as human extinction. We understand this. We would like to slow down, but we can't. Because if we slow down and our competitors in the other company, in the other country, they don't slow down, they will win the race. And the most ruthless people will then dominate the world because they will have this wonderful technology, AI. So because we cannot trust the other humans, we must move faster. And then I asked the second question, do you think you could trust the super intelligent AIs you are developing? And they say yes. The same people who, like a minute ago, told me we cannot trust the other humans, suddenly they become extremely trustworthy and they say, but we would be able to trust the AIs. And this is really on the border of insanity. Because, you know, with humans, I understand why it's difficult to trust the other humans. But we have thousands of years of experience with other human beings. We understand their psychology, their motivation. We know a lot about the human craving for power, but we also understand the mechanisms to check the pursuit of power. And over thousands of years, humans have developed ways to learn to trust each other. And you now have, 10,000 years ago, or 100,000 years ago, humans lived in tiny bands of a few dozen individuals, couldn't trust anybody outside their band. Now you have nations like Japan with hundreds of millions of citizens that can trust each other. The global trade network connects all 8 billion people on the planet. The food we eat, the clothes we wear, the medicine that protects us is often produced by strangers on the other side of the planet. So yes, there's still a huge problem how to trust other people, but we have experience in doing that. We have zero experience with super intelligent AIs. We have no idea what kind of goals and tricks they might develop. We have no idea what happens when you have millions and millions of super intelligent AIs interacting with each other and with millions of human beings. AI is not one single big computer somewhere. It's going to be, think about it as a wave of immigration sweeping over the entire world. You now have all these populist parties that are so afraid of immigrants. Oh, the immigrants will come. The immigrants will take our jobs. The immigrants they have different ideas about culture. They will take over our country. They will change our culture. We are so afraid. AI is a wave of millions of alien immigrants that will take people's jobs, that will have very, very different ideas about how to run societies, that could take over countries. This is should frighten people much more. And this is the big paradox. And the big question is, how do you build trust between humans before we develop super intelligent AI?
So you talk about trust between human and, let's say autonomous AI or
AI agents.
AI agents, yes. But also the trust between so-called elite and so-called, sort of normal citizen is, division is widening.
Yeah.
And of course the populist and or also dictator you mentioned in Nexus that they try to take advantage of AI as an agent, not as an agent, but as a tool right now.
Yeah.
But then consequence is going to be unknown because, as you mentioned. So how do you see the trust between or division between so-called elite and sort of populist kind of generation? Because your books is probably read mostly by so-called elite side, but I'm wondering how much this book is influencing general public, because that's what we need. You're trying to bridge between those those two divided group of people to narrowing the division. So,
well, like many divisions that we invent in our minds, this division also is a false dichotomy. like the elite and the people. You know, you have the richest person in the world, Elon Musk, and a group of other billionaires, like Donald Trump, who is a billionaire, claiming that they are against elites. If you're not an elite, so what is an elite? Like the richest person in the world is not an elite. All these billionaires who are now running the US government, oh, they are not elites. Why? I mean, the word elite has become kind of a negative term that you just put on your political rivals. The fact is that every human group has an elite. I mean, you cannot run any group of people, not even a football club. You always have people who are more talented in this or have more power or more influence. This is just the nature of human society. The problem is not with the existence of elite. The main question to ask, is it a serving elite or is it a self-serving elite?
That's true.
If you have a group of people from a small group of friends all the way to an entire country or the whole planet, and the people who has the most influence there, they use their power only for their own self-benefit, this is a very bad situation. The ideal is that the people who have more talent in a particular field or more influence or more power, they use it for the benefit of society. The fantasy of we can just create a society without any elite, that never works. It's always a trick of some people to gain power for themselves. You know, the biggest experiment in creating completely equal society without any elite was communism, and we all know where this led to. So is North Korea a society without any elite? Maybe because there is just one.
Yes.
But this is not what we should be aiming towards. I think especially for an institution like this, yes, and for all universities, the purpose is not to destroy elites or break down all barriers between this group. The purpose is to create a serving elite.
Yes.
That people who they have more talent in a particular field, they have more influence in that particular field, and they use their talents and their power not just for their personal benefit, but for the benefit of all. That should be the aim.
So you also, in Nexus, you also talk about division between those who live in cyberspace versus physical space. And more people are now living in cyberspace and just following, let's say, tweets under 280 characters and X and so on. How should educational institutions like us and also K-12, secondary, primary education should tackle the challenge of having younger generation be able to read this size book, thought-provoking, books that makes us think and we'll also discuss. But that's getting more and more difficult for us. So what's the role of education to basically maintain the intellectual ability of human being?
Yeah, I mean, in previous eras, educational institutions focused on providing people with information because information was scarce. It was a scarce commodity. Maybe you live in a distant town and there is just one library in the town with just 100 books. So just getting a book was very difficult. Now it's exactly the opposite. People don't need more information. We are flooded by enormous amounts of information. And the main thing to understand is that information isn't truth. The truth is a very rare subset of information. If you think about all the information in the world, so the truth is a very, very small percentage of that. Most information is junk. Most information is fiction and fantasy and lies and propaganda and so forth. And there is it's easy to understand why. The truth is costly, whereas fiction is cheap. If you want to write a truthful account of anything, you need to do research. You need to spend time on analyzing it, on fact-checking it. It takes time and effort and money. Fiction is very cheap. You just write anything that comes up in your mind, very cheap. Secondly, the truth tends to be complicated because reality is complicated. Like if you want to write an account about quantum physics, it's complicated. Whereas people usually don't like complicated narratives. They want simple stories. Yes. And again, fiction can be made as simple as you would like it to be because you just invent it. And finally, the truth is often painful. Not always, but some parts of reality are uncomfortable. You know, from the level of individual, this is why people go to therapy, because if it was everything about me was so pleasant and fun, I wouldn't need a therapist to help me acknowledge the painful memories or painful patterns that I have inside myself. And this is true all the way to entire nations that often don't want to recognize some painful parts of their history or of their society. So the truth is sometimes painful. Fiction can be made as flattering as you would like it to be. So in this competition between costly and complicated and painful truth and cheap, simple, attractive fiction, fiction wins. And the world is flooded by enormous amounts of fiction. The job, the task of institutions like universities, like newspapers, is not just to provide people with more information. They have too much of it. To provide them with a method to find these rare gems of truth inside the ocean of information and to know how to tell the difference. So, you know, as a historian, the main thing I teach my students in history class is not facts about the past. Oh, this king won that battle against that king in that year. They don't need me. They can just Google it. What they still need to learn in history department is how do I tell the difference between a reliable historical source and an unreliable source. A source may be something I just read today on the internet. How do I know if I can trust this TikTok video or not? A source can be something from the Middle Ages. You find a document from 1,000 years ago. How do you know the king wrote that he won this battle? How do you know whether to believe? Because people lied also 1,000 years ago, not just today. So that's the main question. And that's in every scientific discipline, of course, it's a bit different, but the key question is not about getting more information. It's about how do we tell the difference between reliable and unreliable information. The same thing in experiments, in physics or in chemistry. How do I know whether this experiment was ran correctly and I can trust the outcome, or there was some problem and I shouldn't trust it?
You said truth can sometimes be painful. And indeed, reading Nexus at least brought me, a wide variety of emotions. But at the same time, it gave me hope that it's not too late. And there's a, human nature that is, that can ability to self-correct and also ability to cooperate, work together. If only we had time, I suppose, right? Before AI gets somewhere else. There should be a way for us to cope with this. And this is why, as Professor Yamamoto stated, we established a so-called cross-dignity center where we, humanity and also social science professors, academicians get together to tackle exactly that. So if you were a research scientist at our Cross-Dignity Center, oh, by the way, you're welcome to join us anytime.
Thank you.
What would be the research topic of yours?
How to build trust between humans. I think that is the most urgent, because what we see now in the world is a collapse of human trust, exactly when we need it most. The biggest danger in the world still is not AI. It's the distrust between humans. If humans could trust each other and cooperate, we could still devise ways to develop AI in a safe way. It's the distrust between humans that make the AI revolution so dangerous. So I would focus on that. It's not too late to build enough trust between human beings to keep AI under control.
And what would be your approach to tackle this challenge of, building trust?
I think we need input, and this is why an interdisciplinary center is the ideal place to do it, because no single discipline can tackle this question by itself. You need input from biology and psychology, because we are still animals. You need to understand our animal inheritance. And you can learn a lot from how chimpanzees, for instance, build trust or fail to build trust between themselves to understand how humans function. You need the input, from economics, of course, from computer science, because today all social systems are based on the new information technology. So a lot of lessons about how to build trust between humans that were very successful until, say, 10, 20 years ago are now obsolete. Because now humans communicate through computers. And if we don't understand this new technology that is now mediating between, and there is a huge discussion about what has caused this collapse of human trust over the last 10 or 20 years. It's a paradox, because humanity is in the best condition we were ever in. You look at most of the kind of hard data, things like child mortality, like disease, like famine, it all goes down. We are in the best situation ever, and yet people are so angry and so frustrated and can't talk with each other. What happened? What happened is that a new technology came between humans. And now most human communication is mediated by a non-human agent, which is creating havoc in the world. So to rebuild trust, we can't go back. We can't say, okay, let's just throw away all the smartphones and computers. It won't work. So we need to relearn how to build trust between masses of people with this mediation of information technology.
Your book is so readable. It's very different from academic writing, so to say. Do you do this intentionally?
Absolutely. I mean, I see my job as building a bridge between the world of academic studies, where mostly experts talk with other experts in a language that is very difficult for lay people without academic background to access. So I try to take the most up-to-date theories and models and findings of the academic and scientific community and relay it, explain it in a way that will be easily accessible, say, even to high school students or to any person who wants to understand what is this AI revolution. I never studied computers. I don't want to have all these graphs and equations. Can I understand in a simple language what is the AI revolution and what is the history of information? So this was the aim of writing the book.
And how do you feel that your effort is penetrating into cyberspace, those who live in cyberspace?
It's very difficult to know. I mean, you write a book, you release it to the world. Yeah. What impact it will actually have on people, very difficult to know. One of the things that helps the book is that it's not only me. My husband and I established a social impact company at the same time that 10 years ago that Homo Deus was published. And I'm in charge of writing the books, and he is in charge of all the business side. And we have a team of 20 people working for us. One of them is here in Tokyo. And with social media accounts and trying to take the ideas of the book and translate them into more and more media so they could reach more and more people. And whether this will be enough, we don't know. I mean, we feel that each person has some little agency in the world. We try to do what we can and trust other people to do what they can. Yes. Nobody can carry the entire world just on their shoulders. If enough people do what they can in their small field of activity, I think we'll be okay.
Nexus just came out in Japanese, so that's why you're here.
Yeah.
But Nexus original version came out last year.
Yeah, in September in English.
September. How do you see the development, especially the Trump administration started, and there are so many developments globally. How do you?
So far, it's been very worrying. Again, because of the accelerating erosion of trust within societies and between societies. We see that the international order is collapsing. Again, the international order established after the Second World War, its most important taboo, its most important rule was that strong countries cannot just invade and conquer weaker countries. And this was in complete opposite to thousands of years of previous history, when, for thousands of years, this was the ordinary thing, that a stronger country would just invade and conquer its neighbors and establish a bigger country, an empire. And humanity enjoyed in the early 21st century the most peaceful and prosperous era in its history, largely because this taboo was maintained. There were conflicts in parts of the world. I come from the Middle East, I come from Israel, I know this perfectly well. It was not a perfect order, but it was better than anything that existed previously. You could see it most easily in the budgets of governments. For most of history, more than 50% of the budget of every king and shogun and emperor was on the military. Soldiers, warships, castles, this was the main government expenditure. In the early 21st century, average government expenditure on the military went down to about 6% or 7%. This amazing achievement. About 10% went to healthcare. It was the first time in human history that governments all over the world spent more on healthcare than on the military. This is now going in reverse. As a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and of other developments, you see defense budgets skyrocket, and this will come at the expense of healthcare and education. And frankly, the Trump administration is not making things any better. You listen to Trump blaming Ukraine for the war, and it's very clear that what he has in mind is a world order in which the proper thing is for the weak to obey the strong.
Right.
And if the weak refuse to obey the strong, the weak are to blame for the resulting conflict.
Right.
And you see it like all over. It threatens that the United States now wants to conquer Greenland. Now, if Denmark and Greenland say, but we don't want to be part of the US, and as a result there is a war, in Trump's mind, who is to blame for that? Denmark is to blame. Because the United States is strong, you must obey the strong. If you don't obey the strong and there is a war, the weak are to blame. They should have obeyed the strong. Now, this kind of worldview, this kind of logic, will bring all humankind back to a constant state of war. And in this situation, it's not just healthcare and education budgets that will go down. Any chance of regulating AI, it will not be possible, because every country will say, we have to win the AI race. We are not going to do anything that might slow us down, and then the other side wins, and then they are the strong, and we have to obey them.
Yet, your book gives us a hope.
Again, as long as we haven't reached that point, there is still hope. And if enough people do the right thing in the coming months and years, humanity will still be okay.
Thank you so much. Time's up, she said. So thank you so much, Yuval. This has been so wonderful, and so we're so delighted to have you. So thank you so much. we stay here to receive more questions.
Harari 教授、塾長ありがとうございました。Thank you, Professor Harari and President. では続けて、塾生との質疑応答の時間に入らせていただきます。
Thank you for great discussion. I was really impressed as a co-director of the Cross Dignity Center. Now I'm thinking about a new project in the Cross Dignity Center, which is related to how to trust human beings. Thank you very much. So I'm going to speak in Japanese for Japanese students and Japanese reporters. And due to editing issues of news organizations, so yeah, I'd like you to ask a question in Japanese. Okay. Yeah, I know you students can speak English fluently, but yeah, editing issue. Thank you. OK. じゃあ、日本語を喋ります。ご質問、いろいろ学生じゃない方もたくさん来ていただいていますけれども、今回、この後、学生との対話の時間にしたいと思っておりますので、学生からの質問を受け付けたいと思います。それではいかがでしょうか、早速ですが。じゃあ、そちらの方、お願いできますか。はい、すみません。
非常に示唆に富んだディスカッションありがとうございました。2点質問させていただきたいんですけれども、まず1点目が、先ほどおっしゃられていたようにAI が台頭して AI が独自にネットワークを築く一方で人間の間では非常に深刻な分裂が生じているっていう現状認識をされていて、私もそれは非常に同意するところであります。でそういった状態においてAI を通したりアルゴリズムを通して会話をすることによってより分裂が深まっていっていると思うんですけれども、それによって我々がこれまで広く共有していたナラティブも分裂していっているように思います。でそうした分裂した状況の中でサピエンス全史以降ハラリさんが繰り返し論ってきたサピエンスの特有の集団性を確立して維持する役割を果たしてきた共同主観的現実というのは今後の社会においてどのような役割を果たすと考えているでしょうか。お聞かせください。
So yes, our special ability as Homo sapiens is to organize very large cooperation between thousands and millions of billions of people through shared stories, through shared narratives, not just about gods and religions, but also in the economy. Like the most successful story ever invented is probably money. That it's the only story that everybody believes. Not everybody believes in God, in this God or that God, but even people who completely disagree about other things. You know, you look at the United States, Republicans and Democrats cannot agree about anything except the dollar. If a Republican comes with a dollar, the Democrat will accept it and sell whatever it is, bread or gasoline, and vice versa. Even this is now under threat with cryptocurrency.
Yes.
Because there are the people who say, we don't want the dollar, we want crypto. And this is a very important indication because dollar is human currency. It's produced by human institutions like banks. Crypto, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so forth, is a post-human currency produced by algorithms. The people who say, I don't trust dollar, I trust Bitcoin, what they actually say is, I don't trust humans, I trust algorithms. I don't trust the humans who run the banks. I prefer to trust the algorithms who run the cryptocurrency networks. Now, and this you see in more and more areas. Also, you talked about bureaucracy earlier. So you see at the same time that Elon Musk and Donald Trump, they are firing tens of thousands of human bureaucrats, but they are not really against bureaucracy because they simply replace them with digital bureaucrats, with algorithms. And this is the shift in power from humans to algorithms. When it comes to stories, this is where social media is most relevant. That previously all the stories that circulated in the world, they came from the human mind, and it was human editors who decided what stories will dominate the conversation. Like you have a newspaper, you have a TV station, so you have a human editor going over all the stories that were published today and say, oh, this is the most important story, we'll publish this on the front page. And everybody reads this and talk about it. Now this job too is done by an algorithm. If you ask who are the most important editors in the world right now, they are the editors of TikTok and Facebook and Twitter, and they are not human. They are algorithms. So the stories are being produced by and spread by non-human intelligence to maintain in human trust and cooperation. I think that it's not a complete solution, of course, but the first and simplest thing every government should do is pass a law banning fake humans, banning counterfeit humans. The same way there is a law that bans counterfeit money. You cannot just print yens and pretend this is real. No, you can't. Same thing with human beings. Until today, you couldn't create fake humans. Now you can. Bots can pretend to be humans. Much of the traffic in places like TikTok and like X Twitter is run by bots that pretend to be human beings. So the first and simplest step to take, have a very strict law. You cannot fake humans. AIs are welcome to talk with us on condition that they identify as an AI. If somebody tries to fake humans, or if a platform doesn't take action against fake humans, they should go to jail. The same way that if somebody has a printing press or print shop and people there try to print yens, what will happen to the owner of the print shop? He goes to jail. It should be the same thing, even worse, with trying to fake humans.
Thank you. 追加で何かありますか？
すいません。2点目なんですけど、それこそ、今その偽情報とかがこう流通している一方で、その今先ほどおっしゃられたその人間間の信頼をこう回復するというか確立するためのルールというものもおそらくフィクションであると思うんですが、そしてそのネクサスにおいてもそのフィクションによる秩序の安定とその真実の追求のバランスが重要であるというふうにおっしゃっていたと思いますが、その真実の追求によって修正されるべきフィクション、そのフェイクニュースのようなフィクションとその維持されるべき社会の安定化に寄与するようなフィクションの区別というのはいかにできるというふうに考えておられるかお聞かせください。お願いします。
So when it comes to fake news and disinformation and all that, we need to differentiate between freedom of speech and freedom of information. Freedom of speech is given to human beings. It's a human right, a very important human right, which should be protected. Whether it is here in this hall, whether it is on TikTok or Facebook or anywhere else, human beings, except in extreme situations, should have the right to express their views without fear of being punished for it. This should be protected. Freedom of information is something very different. It's a new right which is given not to human beings, it's given to AIs and algorithms and bots. When a lot of the social media giants, they intentionally confuse the two rights. The problem on social media is not that human beings invent lies. Human beings have been inventing lies for thousands of years. Except in extreme circumstances, they should not be punished. But the problem is that then you have an algorithm that decides to deliberately spread lies and hate and so forth. And this should be stopped, and this should be punished. Again, it's not if I'm a user on YouTube and I created a fake news video, I should not be punished for it. But if I'm the company and I deliberately recommend and play this hate-filled conspiracy theory to millions of people because I make money out of it, this should be punished. And this is not protected by freedom of speech because this is done by algorithms, and algorithms don't have rights. They don't have the right to spread lies. It is the job of the social media companies, the same way it's the job of newspapers and TV stations, before they disseminate something, to make sure that it is the truth and it is not some hate-filled lies.
はい、ありがとうござい
ありがとうご
ます。
ざいました。
憲法の研究者としてはいろいろとコメントしたいところもありますけれども、はい、次に行きたいと思います。いかがでしょうか。じゃあ、どうですかね。はい、そうです。
はい、さまざまな問題に、触れた、とても示唆に富んだ、対談ありがとうございました。私からは先ほどご対談の中でもあった AI と戦争についてのご質問させていただきたいです。従来国家の有する財産というのは、天然資源などの有形の富でした。しかし現在ではデータやテクノロジーを用いた、無形の知識へと変化していると思います。で AI を用いたサイバー戦争は、そういった後者を舞台にしていますが、それでも現在起こっているロシア・ウクライナ戦争のように爆撃をしたり生身の人間を殺害する人為的なカタストロフは終わっておりません。この先いくら高知能の AI が発達したとしても、憎悪の感情を持つ人間が存在する限り、そういった戦争の残虐性というのは残り続けてしまうのでしょうか。
Yeah, I mean, the physical world is still there. I mean, none of the development of information technology abolishes the physical world. It's another layer built on top of it. This has been, if you go back thousands of years, so all the information created by humans, whether it's laws and constitutions, whether it's religion, whether it's money, it did not replace or abolish the physical and biological reality. People still have bodies, they need to eat, they need clean water, but all this additional layer of stories, it enabled people to create things like trade networks that changed the way we get food. Like 100,000 years ago, you're hungry, you go to the forest, to the savannah, to the sea, you fish, you hunt, you gather fruits, you eat. Now, very few people do that. Almost everybody depends on a global trade network which is managed by information in order to get their food. So the same is likely to happen with AI, whether it's in peace or in war. War ultimately is still about killing people. But the way it is done is changing. What we saw in recent wars, not just in the Russian invasion of Ukraine, also I know it more from the war in my country between Israelis and Palestinians. A lot of people expected AI to change war by doing the actual shooting. Like people watched all these Hollywood movies about killer robots. So they now look on television and they don't see killer robots. The killing is still done by human beings. What really changed already with AI is who is choosing the targets, who is making the decisions. Who decided to bomb this building? Who decided to bomb this person? And increasingly the answer is AI. That this is something that happened really over the last 2-3 years. Previously, the job of identifying targets was done by human intelligence officers. They would gather all this information and start reading all these reports, and it would take them days to say, oh, this building, this is enemy headquarters, bomb it. Now it's done in seconds by AI. AI goes over enormous amounts of information that no human being can analyze. It spots patterns that no human being is able to spot, and within seconds says, this is enemy headquarters, bomb it.
But statistical probability, right?
With statistical probability and with a lot of other computer, very complex mathematical models. Of course, the big question is, can we believe the AI? Maybe it made a mistake. Maybe it told us to bomb a building which is civilian, not military. And I talk with different people, they tell me different stories. Some people say, oh, after the AI points to a target, we get human analysts to go over all the information and make sure there is no mistake.
Right.
Other people say, nah, the human analysts spend something like half a minute. Nobody can really check the AI. It goes over so many data points. So basically, they're just rubber stamp. And the one making the decision is AI. Now, I don't know, probably it's sometimes like this, sometimes like this. But looking to the future, 5 years, 10 years in the future, it's very clear what the trend is. That increasingly the AI will be making the key decisions in warfare, and this is, of course, a very dangerous development.
Thank you. 他いかがでしょうか。じゃあすみません。すみません。なんか全員当てられないとは思うんですが、すみません。
私からは反科学主義の思想についての質問をさせていただきたいと思っています。ホモデウスの文庫版の寄稿においても、ハラリ先生がおっしゃられていたように、コロナウイルスのワクチンの開発がとても大きなテクノロジーの発展だったとおっしゃっていました。それに対して反ワクチン派の思想や、それは陰謀論であるといった思想も多く見受けられました。それはフェイクニュースの話でもあると思うのですが、人類がこれまでやってきたような科学的に対する抵抗とか反発が見受けられるようなものでもあると思います。ハラリ先生がおっしゃっている AI が統制する世の中に対しても同じような反発が起きると思うのですが、そのような反科学的な思想に対してどのような具体的影響が得られるか、またそれに対してどのような対策を講じるべきかお聞かせいただきたいです。お願いします。
Is not something new. They have been around throughout history. This is related to what we mentioned earlier of a key difference between truth and fiction is the truth is complicated, fiction is simple. When there is something like a big pandemic that changes so many things, the truth of the pandemic is very complicated. Simply to understand what a virus is. A virus is such a strange thing. Humans, for most of history, never knew that viruses existed. Only in the last century, we really began to understand what viruses are. And the strange thing about them is that they are not exactly alive and not exactly not alive. There is a huge debate in the scientific community. Are viruses a form of life? Or are they part of biology? Or are they actually just some chemical information? Because a virus cannot reproduce by itself. A virus doesn't eat. It's not like a bacteria that eats things and reproduces. A virus is really just a bit of information. And the amazing ability of this bit of genetic code is to get into the cells of my body and tell my own body, my own cells, to start producing more copies of that code. So you start with one code, one line of code, it takes over a cell in my body, you get 1 million copies of that code. They spread to other cells. They tell the other cells, produce more copies of that code. This is how it goes viral. And this is such a strange thing. We don't see things like that happening on our level of reality. It's happening on a very, very small level of reality. So to understand how a pandemic begins and spreads, very complicated. It's much easier to believe a conspiracy theory. Oh, there is a group of very powerful people. They created this pandemic to take over the world. The one thing I can say as a historian is that these types of conspiracies are always wrong for the simple reason the world is too complicated for any small number of people to really understand it and manipulate it. The level of manipulation that conspiracy theories usually assume is completely unrealistic. You look at how governments, even if you have a government with all the power of a government that tries to do something, very often it fails. Like, I don't know, the Americans decide to invade Iraq. They are the strongest country in the world. They have all this military power, and they fail. Yes, they manage to conquer Iraq. Then everything goes off plan. And eventually it's Iran that becomes the main beneficiary, the victor of the war. So the Americans had one plan, something completely different happened. This is how the actual world functions. And conspiracy theories, they are usually this kind of wishful thinking that the world is a very simple place. If a couple of people in a room can plan to take over the world and then they just do it. It never happens.
Okay, thank you very much. 大丈夫ですか？はい。じゃあ、他の方いかがでしょうか？じゃあ、ちょっと前の方で、じゃあ、お願いします。
はじめまして。私からはAI と娯楽、人間の娯楽についてお聞きしたいです。そもそも今の社会ってSNS が発達していて、YouTube だったり X だったり、TikTok だったり、そういうのを見て人間が楽しさを得る社会じゃないですか。でそんな中で、ハラリ先生もおっしゃってるように、人間がエリートと非エリートで、より格差が拡大してしまう。で私としてはそのエリートと非エリートでなんか娯楽の形がより変化していってしまうのではないかなと思ったんですけど、ハラリー先生は今後の娯楽とか楽しみの形と意義、それはどう変化していくとお考えでしょうか？
Can you just say what will exactly change?
ハラリ先生は今後の娯楽の、形、そして意義がどう変化するとお考えか。
And we don't know, we can't predict, but it's very clear that more and more both the form and the content of entertainment will come from AI and not from human beings. Previously in history, all entertainment, whether it's poetry or theater, television, movies, everything came out of the human mind, of the human imagination. Now we have something on the planet that is capable of producing such things, perhaps certainly far more cheaply than human beings and far more efficiently, and also break out of the limitations of the human imagination. Because the human imagination is limited by the human brain, by our own biological limitations. AI isn't. So to take an example from a slightly different area, like the game of Go, in 2016 there was this very famous game between AlphaGo, an AI, and Lee Sedol, one of the Go world champion. And AlphaGo won. It was one of the decisive moments in the AI revolution. But the amazing thing about the game wasn't just that AlphaGo defeated the human world champion, it's the way he did it. It came up with strategies that were completely alien. That, humans have been playing Go in East Asia for thousands of years. It was invented more than 2,000 years ago. Tens of millions of people played Go. It was considered a form of art, not just a game. Entire philosophies developed around how to play Go, and yet, all those years, all those people, nobody ever thought of playing Go like AlphaGo. So you can imagine it like a landscape, like a planet Go, all the different ways to play Go. And humans have been stuck on one island in planet Go, and they thought this was the whole planet. For 2,000 years, they thought these are the only ways to play Go. They couldn't leave this mental island because our minds are limited. Then AlphaGo came and said, look, you can play like this, you can play like this, discovered entire new areas on the planet Go. The same thing is likely to happen in music, in painting, in theater, in television. It's already happening. So many people are now playing with using AI to create videos. And this is just the very beginning of the process. If you think the AIs of today are sophisticated, it's nothing compared to what we will have in 10 years. So, like other fields, also at entertainment will change completely. And it's impossible to predict in what ways, because, and this is the nature of AI, is that it's an alien form of intelligence. So human intelligence cannot predict what the alien intelligence will do. If you can predict everything the AI is going to do, it's not an AI. It's just some automatic machine. Like if you have a coffee machine and you can predict everything the coffee machine will do, I press this button, it makes espresso. This is an automatic machine. It is not an AI. When is it an AI? When you press a button, or you don't even press any button. You just approach the machine, and the machine tells you, hey, I just invented this morning a new drink that I think you would like better than coffee, and I made you a cup. Then it's an AI.
Thank you. じゃあ他いかがでしょうか。じゃあそこの方とかいかがでしょう。はい、
対談ありがとうございました。私は、AI が、ある、社会の中で人間が、どのように合意を取っていくかっていうことについて、ご質問したいんですけれども、まず、AI っていうものは、人間が使用するインターネットの、利便性というものをとても高めていると思います。で、そういうふうになっていくと、人間と先ほどもお話しされていたようなそのエリートとそうでない人との、その隔絶っていうものがとても大きくなっていって、それとともにやっぱり価値観の多様化っていうものも大きくなっていくと思います。そうすると先ほどもおっしゃられていたようなその正しい情報っていうのが必ずしも出回るようにはなくなってしまっていって、その正しい情報を知っている人っていうのがその数的なマジョリティになり得ないっていう状態がかなり主流になっていくんじゃないかっていうふうに考えてはいるんですけれども、そういった社会の中で人間はどのように合意を取っていくべきだとお考えですか。お聞かせください。
Yeah, so as I said, I agree. This is the biggest question. How to reach agreement between humans in an era when communication between humans is being twisted and manipulated by the new information technology. I don't know. That's, and I was asked earlier, what is the research project? If I knew the answer, no need of research project, because we already have the answer. I think one of the The most important thing in science is to admit ignorance. For me, the scientific revolution, looking back in history, was a revolution of ignorance, not of knowledge. Before science, every human group, every human culture said, we already know everything. Everything is in the holy books, or our holy men and sometimes holy women know everything. No need of new research. The scientific revolution was about people coming and saying, we don't know. We really want to know this, the answer to this question, and we don't know what it is. Oh, so we need to do research. And this is still the case right now. So again, if you ask me what is the most important research subject, not just for the research center here, but generally, I would say this is the research subject. And to like really kind of focus it, it's not a general question about how to establish trust between humans. It's how to establish trust between humans when they mostly communicate through this new technology of the digital infrastructure, of computers and social media and AI, and everything we thought we learned about building trust over thousands of years is coming into question. And we need more scientists, more scholars, more researchers focusing on that issue.
I think Professor Yamamoto and his colleagues will conduct this as a Yuval Harari project within the center. So you're welcome to join the center.
Yes, please. じゃあ他いかがでしょうか。じゃあちょっと真ん中のそちらの方お願いできますか。
とても興味深いお話を聞かせていただきありがとうございます。理工学部の学生として1点、ハラリ氏に質問させてください。その高度に技術だったり知見だったりが専門化された学術領域において、その一種のエコーチェンバー現象のようなものは、往々にして、生じるかと思います。で、ハラリ氏の執筆したネクサスでも、そのに関してはそのパブリッシュアペリッシュ、つまり出版可視化っていうような観点から、可能性は低いであろうというふうにおっしゃられていたかと思いますが、神経科学を私自身専攻している身として、その科学っていうのは従来の、常識っていうのを、打ち破って新たに再定義する、ことも重要であるっていうふうに考えています。でこの意味でその、もしその将来これから出てくる AI っていうのがそのエージェントとして、その働くというのであれば、その人間が、これまで、リードしてきた研究に対して AI がリードする研究っていうのはそのようなエコーチェンバー現象がより起こりやすくなっていくのか、それともそのままなのか、もしくは起こりづらくなっていくのかということに関して、ご意見を聞かせていただきたいと思います。
Yeah, AI is now revolutionizing scientific research, as you said. We just saw Nobel Prizes, 2 Nobel Prizes in physics and in chemistry actually go to AI. And I was especially amazed by the AI Nobel Prize in chemistry, which was given to the developers of AlphaFold. And I mean, they're brilliant people. I'm not sure they are chemists. I mean, they needed deep understanding of chemistry to develop AlphaFold, of course, but their background is not in chemistry. But their creation completely changed chemistry and will change biology and will change medicine production by solving this huge scientific puzzle of predicting how proteins fold. Now, what this tells us is not just that AI will become better than humans in more and more scientific areas, but that it will be able, as you said, to break the barriers. Humans have a limited capacity. Like I study history for many years, I don't have time to study physics deeply or to study chemistry deeply. This is why we have this division in the university. This is the physics department, this is history department. You can't do both. For AI, there is no limitation like that. So in a way, AI could bring a much more holistic approach to science, Maybe not AlphaFold, maybe not the AI of today, but the AI of 10 years from now, you can have an AI network which understands very deeply chemistry and economics and history and can combine data and models from all these very different disciplines. And it will, the question then becomes, so what would be the role of humans in such a situation? And again, we don't know. I mean, given the pace of development and the potential, it's not clear. What would be still, what could humans contribute to research in 10 or 20 years?
Thank you very much. じゃあすみません、時間そろそろ来ているのですが、最後の質問にしたいと思いますが、じゃあそちらの方でいかがですか。ちょっとはい。じゃあ一つだけにしていただければと思います。
はい、わかりました。僕からは、コンピューター間のインターサブジェクティブリアリティについて、質問させていただきたいと思います。ネクサスの中でコンピューターの間のインターサブジェクティブリアリティ、あるいはコンピューターと我々の間のインターサブジェクティブリアリティっていうのが今後増えていくと書かれていたと思います。で、そうした現実は私たちにとってはとても複雑で、そして異質であるがゆえにとても理解しづらいものであるになると予想されていました。しかし、それがたとえ異質であるからといっても、あるいは異質であるがゆえに私たちはそれを理解するように努力し続けると、僕は思いますし、そうした理解しようとする鋭意こそがその AI の暴走を食い止めるというか、その手段の一つになりうると思っています。で、その歴史を振り返ったときに、そのネクサスの中にもありましたが、例えば聖書にするとか、あるいはそうした書物にする、あるいはその神様の像を作るであるとか、聖人のイコンを作るであるとか、物化すると、現実を物化するというのが、そうしたその現実を多くの人が理解しやすくするような手段の一つであると思っていますし、それは現在でもそのディズニーランドでミッキーマウスの着ぐるみが動いているっていうのは、その特に子どもたちにとってはその架空のキャラクターが現実にあるんだというその現実性っていうのを分かりやすく示す手段の一つだと思います。で、そうした中でそうした観点で見るときにコンピューター間のインターサブジェクティブリアリティといったものをそのビジブルでタンジブルな形に表現するためには、どういった手段があるだろうとお考えになられますか。
Yeah, I'm afraid I again have to say that I don't really know, that this is again one of these frontiers of knowledge and research which we should invest in. Maybe I take an example now from economics. I talked earlier about money being the most successful story ever invented. Money is not an objective reality. It has no objective value. You can't eat it. Most money in the world is not even coins and paper notes. It's just information in computers. But money is now undergoing a revolution with the rise of cryptocurrencies. The next revolution might be the appearance of money that only computers understand. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, they are produced by algorithms, but their value still depends on the belief of human beings. When Trump gets elected, value of Bitcoin goes up because humans believe, oh, Trump will deregulate crypto, so I better invest in Bitcoin, and then more people think like that, and the value of Bitcoin goes up. So it's still human belief that is the basis for the value of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. The next step is for digital currencies whose value depends only on the beliefs of AIs and algorithms. Even today, a large part of the trade in the world, especially trade in bonds and stocks and foreign exchange, it's just algorithms trading with other algorithms. And especially if humans deregulate the financial markets, which is what the Trump administration is all about, So we are likely to see new financial devices, new kinds of money, which only AIs understand, and AIs trade with other AIs. And what happens in a world when humans no longer understand finance? This can happen in 10 years or so. Like, think about it from, think about horses and money. People have been buying and selling horses for money for thousands of years, but the horses never understood what was happening. The horse could see that, say, one samurai is giving some piece of shiny metal to a merchant and gets me, the horse, in return. But what was happening there? What is this worthless piece of metal? The horses never understood money. Only humans understood them, which is why we control the horses and not vice versa. In 10 years, our life could be managed by financial transactions between algorithms that we can't understand. That whether we get a loan to buy a house will be decided by algorithms talking with algorithms in a financial language which is unintelligible to human beings. Not because we didn't go to college or but simply because it's mathematically, the algorithms can have mathematical models of the economy which are too complicated for the organic human brain. What is the meaning, say, for democracies if not even the prime minister or the finance minister understand finance anymore? There is a financial crisis, but no human being understands why there is a financial crisis and what can be done about it. And it's not just a problem for democracies, also for dictatorships. The biggest fear of every dictator in history is to have a subordinate that becomes more powerful than me. Like if you're Putin or if you're Kim, your biggest fear, the thing that keeps you up at night, is maybe the defense minister is plotting against me. Maybe some army general will have a coup and kill me, take my place. That's the biggest fear. And so for them, if AI becomes so powerful that I can no longer understand the AI, it's a threat even to human dictators. So this is a kind of intersubjective computer reality which we are likely to see very soon, especially if we deregulate financial markets. Again, the same way that a government can have a law, no fake humans, AIs can't pretend to be humans. Governments can also regulate financial markets. No, all financial devices that are tradable in the market must be vetted by humans. We don't allow. But with the current trend, we are likely to see a post-human financial system very soon. And if there is a big financial crisis in the post-human financial system, the humans will suffer greatly.
Thank you very much. それはちょっと時間が来ましたので、学生からのご質問はここまでとしたいと思います。今日は慶應義塾の一貫校の生徒さんたちも学生さんいらっしゃったということですけど、おそらく当てられなかったのではないかなというふうに思っています。お詫びを申し上げたいというふうに思います。それではですね、ここで質疑とそれから今日のシンポジウムをここまでとしたいと思います。本当にハラリさん、学生の質問非常に誠実にお答えいただきましてありがとうございます。それから伊藤さんも非常にディスカッション、素晴らしいディスカッションありがとうございました。じゃあお二人に盛大な拍手をお願いいたします。
Thank you.
Thank you. では最後にハラリ教授から本日の対談と質疑応答のご感想と学生へのメッセージを頂戴したいと思います。Professor Harari, in closing, please could you give us your thoughts on today's talk and Q&A sessions and a message to the students?
Oh, closing remarks. So there is a lot to think about. There is a lot to research. Again, the key thing, many of the things we talked about sound very frightening. Part of the problem is you have the people who, in the companies that develop the AI, that talk about all the positive potential of AI. So to balance it, you need philosophers and historians and critics who say, wait a minute, there are also dangers. So I find myself in occasions like this talking mainly about the dangers. But of course, there is also enormous positive potential. Otherwise, nobody would develop the technology in fields ranging from medicine to preventing catastrophic climate change. And it's definitely there. There is enormous positive potential. The question is not how to stop the development of AI. This is unrealistic and undesired. We want to develop it. We just want to do it in a safe way. And here, again, the key is to build trust between human beings. There is a lot that every person can do in your specific field. So, sometimes people feel crushed by the weight of the world that, all these problems, how can we... So don't feel like the whole world is just on your shoulders. There are more than 8 billion other humans on the planet. So they share in this weight of holding the planet. And of course, there are not just humans. There are also animals and plants and other organisms. And each one doing their small little thing. When I think about trust, which was maybe the major theme of our meeting, maybe I would leave you with the following thought, that trust is really the foundation of life, in the sense that if you don't trust others, if you don't trust what is outside you, you cannot live for a single minute. Because even the air we breathe, like this simple movement that sustains life, the breath, what is it? It is trusting in what is outside us. You have all these people today, including the most powerful people in the world, that they want to be separate. All they think about is separating things, building barriers and borders and walls. And actually, complete separation is death. Every moment, we have this simple gesture of trust in what is outside us. We open our mouth or our nose, and we take in something from the outside. We have trust in it. And then we give it back. And this is the in and out movement of trust that sustains life. If you don't trust what is outside you, and you just block your mouth and your nose, you die within a minute or two. So yeah, I know there is a lot of reason for anxiety, for fear. It's real. It's not imaginary. There are huge problems in the world. But ultimately, the basis of life is trust. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So I'm very excited to be back here. Last time I was here, I was talking about my own book with Sam Altman, who did an excellent job, a little frightening how good he was as an interviewer for my book. But I'm very excited. I've interviewed Yuval, I think, several times. But I'm super excited that he wrote a book about AI, really. But it's actually about the history of information, because he's a historian by trade. And so I'm super excited to talk about that. I'm thrilled you're all here. You missed the vice presidential debate. It's probably a good thing. This is much more interesting. And we won't be talking about eating dogs, so that's good. We're already way ahead. And I'm very excited. He needs no introduction. What an amazing man, what an amazing author. And this book is sure to be another bestseller. Yuval, come out, Yuval Harari. Great. So, So we have a lot of questions, and then we'll get to questions from the audience at the end. We can't see you very well right now, so apologies if I don't, but we will bring up the lights when you ask questions. But I've got a bunch of them. This is actually going to be put on with Kara Swisher on the podcast, it should be really interesting and a great discussion. So welcome to City Arts and Lectures. It's great to see you again, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you. It's really good to be here with you.
So we're here to talk about your latest book, Nexus, a brief history of information networks from the Stone Age to AI. It's not brief. It's quite a large and long book.
From the Stone Age to AI in 400 pages, it's quite brief.
Oh, all right. Okay, fine. Okay, all right. Okay, if you say so. Your first bestseller, Sapiens, obviously, A Brief History of Humankind. I like to use brief all the time. Came out in 2011. And honestly, these books could kill a small dog, speaking of dogs. And then you wrote Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow in 2015. Yeah. And again, despite the titles are not so brief. So let's talk about what you were trying to do with Nexus and how it relates to these other books that you wrote and why you decided to do this. And then we're going to get into history first.
So, I mean, it picks up where I left off with Sapiens and with Homo Deus. Mm-hmm. The two main questions at the basis of the book is, first of all, if humans are so smart, why are we so stupid? Mm-hmm. Like, we've managed to take over this planet, to reach the moon, to split the atom, to decipher DNA, and here we are on the verge of destroying ourselves and much of the ecological system with us in several different ways. Could be ecological collapse, could be nuclear war, could be the rise of AI. Mm-hmm. So what's wrong with us? Mm-hmm. And you know, this is a question that has bothered people throughout history. And you have a lot of answers in mythologies and theologies that tells us that there is something wrong with us. Mm-hmm. There is something wrong with human nature. Mm-hmm. And Nexus takes a different view. The problem is not in our nature. The problem is in our information. Mm-hmm. If you give good people bad information, they will make bad decisions and self-destructive decisions. And then the book goes on to explore the long-term history of information. Why isn't information getting better? Mm-hmm. I mean, you would have expected that over thousands of years, our information will get better, and it really doesn't. Large-scale modern societies are as susceptible to mass delusion and really insanity, like mass insanity, as Stone Age tribes. If you think about the 20th century with Stalinism and Nazism, I mean, far more powerful, of course, than Stone Age tribes, a lot more sophisticated information technology, but still can be extremely delusional. And when you look at the world today, we have the most sophisticated information technology in history, and people are unable to hold a rational conversation anymore.
You know, there's a technology term for that, which is very technical, which is garbage in, garbage out, right? And I think it explains quite a bit of it in a really kind of very easy, simple way. But the point you're making is this is historical. This is a historical thing. It's just more sophisticated in the garbage that we're making for ourselves, correct?
But the garbage is not accidental, and it's effective in one important thing. It's effective in creating order. And one of the key ideas of the book is that humans control the world because we can cooperate in larger numbers than any other animals. And to create a large-scale cooperative system, you need two things which pull you in different directions. You need to know some truth about the world, but you also need to preserve order between large numbers of people, thousands, millions, billions. And the truth is not the easiest way to do it. In most cases, fiction and fantasy and downright lies are more effective in creating order among people.
So one of the things that I think about a lot today, and we'll get into this in a minute, I want to get to history first, is the idea that technology and information is either a tool or a weapon. Technology used, whether it's the printing press, whether it's papyrus, it's both used as both, and it will always be used as a weapon no matter what happens in every historical A spear is, a spear is always a weapon, but a knife is a better example. It's a tool and a weapon. Obviously, AI is very hot right now, but in Homo Deus, you discuss the benefits and dangers of new information technology, especially if humans lose control. And you write in Nexus that since Homo Deus, your conversations about AI have gone from being idle philosophical speculations to having, quote, focused intensity of an emergency room. What is that conversation right now, from your perspective?
About AI? Mm-hmm. I mean, there are two conversations. One is simply understanding what we are facing. What is AI? Why is it dangerous? What is the threat? And a lot of people have difficulty grasping it. It's not like nuclear weapons.
Right.
That the danger was obvious, and nuclear war, which will just kill everybody. What's the danger in AI? And Hollywood, I think, did us a big service in focusing attention on that issue long before anybody else thought about it. But it focused on the wrong scenario. Mm-hmm. If you think about the Terminator or the Matrix, the focus is on the big robot rebellion.
Right.
The moment the AIs decide to take over the world and wipe us out. And this is unlikely to happen anytime soon because AI doesn't have the kind of broad intelligence necessary to build a robot army and take over a country or the whole world. Mm-hmm. And this makes people feel complacent. And I think one of the key issues in the conversation about AI is to explain that it's not about the big robot rebellion, it's more about the AI bureaucrats. Mm-hmm. It will take the world from within and not by rebelling from outside or from below. I mean, AI, yes, it's not a general intelligence, but it doesn't need to be. Within a bureaucracy, you need a very kind of narrow intelligence to gain enormous power. Mm-hmm. If you think about a lawyer, for instance, as an example, if you drop a lawyer in the middle of the savannah, he or she are not particularly powerful entities. Mm-hmm. They are much weaker than a lion or an elephant or a hyena. Mm-hmm. But within a bureaucracy, a lawyer could be more powerful than all the lions of the world put together.
Right.
And this is where AI is stepping in. We now have millions of AI bureaucrats increasingly making important decisions about us, about the world. You apply to a bank to get a loan, it's an AI deciding. Mm-hmm. You apply for a job. In wars, increasingly, it's AIs choosing the targets. Mm-hmm. So one part of the conversation is to understand what is the threat, and we can explore that. The other part of the conversation is, of course, what to do about it. And here I think, almost everybody after a certain amount of time agreed that the best thing would be to simply slow down. Give human societies...
Not everybody agrees that. No, not everybody does.
Because of an argument that I'll get to immediately. They will say, ideally, yes, it would be good to slow down because it would give human society time to adapt, but we can't slow down, we can't afford to slow down, because then the bad guys, our competitors here or across the ocean, they will not slow down and they will win the race, so we must run faster. Mm-hmm. And then you have this kind of paradox that basically they are telling us we have to run faster because we can't trust the humans, but we think we'll be able to trust the AIs.
Right, exactly. And, you and I had this discussion with Daniel Kahneman, the late Daniel Kahneman, about the decision-making of AI versus decision-making of humans. I don't know if you remember that. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that's I think is interesting to explore at the beginning, though, is the historical, what's happened historically with much lesser information systems that humans construct. So the tacit assumption of this information age is what we call, I think all ages have been information ages in a lot of ways. As you said, that more information will lead to the truth, which will lead to more wisdom, more openness, a better world. Obviously, that's naive, and you discuss that. And you define the information instead as something that creates new realities by connecting different points of view into a network. Talk a little bit about that, because this concept is standard in mathematics, right? But as a philosopher, and historian, do you see any danger in separating information from truth?
Most information is not truth. The truth is a very small subset of all information in the world.
The truth is, first of all, it's costly. If you want to write a truthful account of anything, you need to research, you need to gather evidence, to fact check, to analyze. That's very costly in terms of time and money and effort. Fiction is very cheap. You just write the first things that comes to your mind. The truth is also often very complicated because reality is complicated. Whereas fiction can be made as simple as you would like it to be, and people prefer, usually, simple stories. And finally, the truth can be painful. Whether the truth about us personally, my relationships, what I've done to other people, to myself, or entire nations or cultures. Whereas fiction, you can make it as attractive, as flattering as you would like it to be. So in this competition between truth and fiction and fantasy, truth is at a huge disadvantage. If you just flood the world with information...
Which was the point of a lot of people. Yeah.
Most information will not be the truth. And in this ocean of information, if you don't give the truth some help, some edge, the truth tends to sink to the bottom, not rise to the top.
Right.
And we see it again and again throughout history, every time people invent a new information technology.
So it's really interesting because I was just reading Rachel Maddow's prequel where she talks about Joseph Goebbels talking about this. Like if you flood the zone with bad information or just anything, it washes out the truth. And of course, Tennessee Williams said the truth is at the bottom of bottomless well. You can never get to it. And someone more modern, Steve Bannon. I read Steve Bannon. I'm sorry, I do it for the rest of you. But he talks about it incessantly, the idea of flooding the zone, because that's the best way to confuse and distract people and it's used everywhere, including years ago in Circuit City, which was just an electronics retailer. When I walked in, there was a bunch of TVs, and they were all going. And I said, why is that doing it? And the person goes, oh, it's the wall of confusion. And I was like, what? He goes, we want you to buy a certain television set, so we want to upset and confuse you and then make you wander through a racetrack situation, and then you'll buy the TV we want. Which I know, right? It was brilliant in a way. But as you said, it's not a new thing. So we're used to equating new technology with scientific progress, this virtuous circle, like the case of the printing press. And this was a really interesting part of your book. So let's go a little bit in history. You noted that when the Gutenberg, the press was invented, instead of science, and such as Copernicus's On the Revolutions of the Heavenly Spheres, one of the founding documents of science, of the scientific tradition, you wrote the real bestseller of the 15th century was a book called The Hammer of Witches.
Yeah.
Talk a little about The Hammer of Witches.
Okay.
It was a bestseller.
Huge bestseller.
Yeah.
Huge bestseller. So basically, especially in a place like this, in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, you talk with people about information, they will eventually reach out to history to give you some historical analogies. And they will tell you something like the same way that the printing press caused the scientific revolution, so what we are doing will create a new scientific revolution.
Right.
And the thing is, the printing press did not cause the scientific revolution.
No.
You have about 200 years from the time that Gutenberg brings print technology to Europe in the middle of the 15th century until the flowering of the scientific revolution with Newton and Leibniz and all these people in the middle of the 17th century. During these 200 years, you have the worst wave of wars of religion in European history.
Because of the printing.
Again, the printing press enabled it in a way I'll explain in a moment, and also the worst wave of witch hunt. The big European witch hunt craze is not a medieval phenomenon. It's a modern phenomenon that was helped along by the printing press. Medieval Europeans didn't worry much about witches. They thought they existed, but they didn't think they were dangerous.
Right.
Then around the time that Gutenberg comes with the press, you have a small group of people that comes up with this conspiracy theory that witches are not individuals with magical powers that can brew love potions and help you find lost treasure. There is a global conspiracy led by Satan with agents in every town and every village that wants to destroy humanity.
So QAnon is what you're talking about.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a direct line. There is a direct line. I mean, the ideas are coming from there. And at first,
nobody paid it much attention. Then there was one of the people who popularized it was a man called Heinrich Kramer. He started a do-it-yourself witch hunt in the Alps, what is today Austria. But he was stopped by the church authorities who thought he was crazy and expelled.
Yes.
And he took revenge through the printing press. He wrote this book, The Hammer of the Witches, Malleus Maleficarum, which was, again, a do-it-yourself manual to how to identify and kill witches. And many of the ideas we still associate today with witches, for instance, that witches are mostly women, that they engage in wild sexual orgies, this came to a large extent from the deranged imagination of Heinrich Kramer. Now, just to give you a taste of this book, there is an entire section in the book about the ability of witches to steal penises from men. With all kinds of evidence, it's all evidence-based. I heard from some people that, so for instance, he brings a story, evidence, of a man who wakes up one morning to find out that his penis is gone. And so he suspects the local witch. He goes to the house of the local witch and forces her to bring him back his penis. And the witch says, okay, climb this tree. And he climbs the tree. And at the top of the tree, he finds a bird's nest where the witch keeps all the penises she stole from different men. And she says, okay, you can take your own. And the man, of course, takes the biggest one. And the witch tells you, no, you can't take this one. This belongs to the parish priest.
Oh, okay, good. Good for him.
Now, you can understand why this book sold a few more copies than Copernicus's on the revolution of the heavens.
I don't think there's penises in that. No.
And now this all sounds very, very funny.
But
until you realize the consequences.
Right.
Tens of thousands of people were killed
Mostly
in the most horrendous way during the European witch hunt craze. And to give just one example to balance the funny story about the penises. So in Munich, they arrested an entire family, the Pappenheimer family, accusing them of being part of this global conspiracy of witches. And it's a father, mother, 3 kids, and they start by torturing the 10-year-old boy, the youngest of the family. And you can still read the protocol of the interrogation in the archives in Munich today. And they torture a 10-year-old boy in unspeakable ways until he incriminates his mother. He admits, yes, she's a witch. She went to meet Satan, she kills babies, she summons hailstorm, and they break the whole family, and they execute all of them, including the 10-year-old boy. And, this eventually also reaches to America, the Salem witch hunts. And this was, this was fueled. It was not caused by, of course, but it's not that the printing press caused it, but the printing press enabled it to spread. For the same reason that fake news and conspiracy theories spread today.
And then the people that create the printing presses don't take responsibility for it in modern day.
Yeah,
I've been in that conversation.
And the thing is, that conversation happened centuries ago. And today you again have millions of Americans basically believing in the same story about a global conspiracy led by Satan. To destroy civilization. And if you look, what stopped it last time? How did we, in the end, get to the scientific revolution? It wasn't the technology of the printing press. It was the creation of institutions that were dedicating to sifting through this kind of ocean of information and all these stories about witches and so forth, and developing mechanisms to evaluate reliable information.
And to be trusted by the population, correct? Which is very easily fooled.
And to spread not the information people are most likely to buy, but the information which is most likely to be true. When you send a manuscript to a scientific publisher to be published as a paper or as a book, so they want to know not only will this sell a lot of books or a lot of copies. Is it true? What kind of evidence do you have?
Which I think is, one of the things that's happened, if you fast forward to today, and I want to ask a couple more historical things, because it happens again and again, this constant narrative of lying, essentially, that people tend to believe. was when I had an interview with Mark Zuckerberg where we were talking about Alex Jones, who is one of the greatest purveyors of misinformation, a totally heinous character in our modern history. And I was like, why don't you take him off the platform? He's clearly lying, and it's not true, and these kids weren't child actors, and they're actually dead, and it's damaging to the parents, it's damaging to everyone. And for some reason, he switched the conversation to Holocaust deniers when we did this interview, and I was like, oh, what a mistake on your part, but fine, we'll go to Holocaust deniers. I was like, no, let's stay with Alex Jones, but he did it, and I went along. And he started to talk about that Holocaust deniers don't mean to lie. And I felt that was the definition of Holocaust. I was like, wow. And I let him spin it out, which was really interesting to hear his point of view, which was completely ridiculous. Because I felt that the more Holocaust deniers are on the platform, the more anti-Semitism down the river would happen. Like you could see it happening if these people had access to other people, because it's interesting stuff, right? It's much more interesting than the facts. And you know, he got in a lot of trouble for saying that, and et cetera, but it didn't prevent him from continuing to allow them to thrive on the platform until 2 years later when he decided to kick them off. He decided. One person was responsible, as far as I was concerned, for this flood of anti-Semitism because he refused to do anything at the beginning. So talk a little bit about, from a historical sense, where those, because right now it's in the hands of just a few people, and they have real problems with history. They have real problems with knowledge beyond coding.
Yeah, I think the main issue...
And for some reason, they all have penises, but go ahead.
So they're afraid the witches will steal them.
Well, no, that's just Elon. Nobody wants your penis, Elon. Well...
So how do you go
from
there?
You talk about self-correcting. You talk about the importance of self-correcting mechanisms. That's what you call it.
Yeah, I think, again, the key point about all these issues is not whether people are allowed to say these things.
Yeah.
Because here, I would tend to actually agree with Zuckerberg, with Elon Musk, with others. We should be very careful before we start simply silencing people. You cannot say that at all.
Well, let me make a point. They do silence when they feel like it.
Yes.
So you're aware. It's a lot of hypocrisy.
I know. Okay. But I think, again, when it comes to really censoring, there is a discussion to be had.
Right.
The problem is not with people saying all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. The problem is with the platforms deliberately promoting particular kinds of things that spread hate and fear and anger and outrage. It's at some point, even Elon Musk said it's not freedom of speech, it's freedom of reach.
No, he didn't say it. He copied it from someone. But go ahead, it was said years before.
But he was willing to repeat it.
Sure.
But the thing is that people produce an enormous amount of content all the time.
Right.
And the question is, what gets attention? What gets spread? Mm-hmm. And here, the responsibility of somebody who manages a big platform, a media information system, whether it's a printing shop or whether it's a social media outlet, is to be very careful about what they choose to spread, what they choose to promote. And if they don't know how to tell the difference between facts and lies, they are in the wrong business. I mean, this is, for instance, what was built during the scientific revolution is exactly these mechanisms.
Right.
How do we tell the difference between facts and fiction?
So how do we build those today when this is in the hands of some very troubled people, like with the full control of these things, or either uneducated or just they don't know what they're doing, actually. It's some incompetence, some arrogance, some narcissism. It's in the hands of a very small amount of people who, most of whom know better, and it's in the architecture of this stuff. To me, it's the architecture, because when you look at, say, a Google, it's designed for speed, what you're looking for if you search for whatever, speed, context, and accuracy. Like, I'm searching for ADL, I'm going to get ADL. This is an example I always use. That's a utility, right? It comes to you. What social networks are designed for is virality, speed, and engagement. Which is a different architecture altogether, and it always leads the bad direction. So how do you create, what should influence our thinking? Because the government refuses to step in. We'll get to that in a minute.
First of all, it should be clear that the platforms should be liable for the actions of their algorithms, not for the content of the users.
Yep.
And if somebody posts a hate-filled conspiracy online, that's the responsibility of that human being.
Right.
But then, if the Facebook algorithm or the TikTok algorithm decides to promote that conspiracy theory, to recommend it, to autoplay it, this is no longer on the user. This is the action of the algorithm, and this is the main problem. And I mean, it's amazing to think about it, but one of the first jobs to be automated in the world was not taxi drivers and was not textile workers, it was editors, news editors. I mean, this used to be one of the most powerful positions in society. If you edit a major news platform, a newspaper, you're one of the most important people because you shape the public conversation.
Sure.
And we saw throughout history how much power editors had. Like during the French Revolution, Jean-Paul Marat shaped the course of the French Revolution by editing maybe the most important newspaper of Paris, of France, in those times, L'Ami du Peuple. Lenin, before he was dictator of the Soviet Union, his one job basically was editor of a newspaper, Iskra. Mussolini was editor of the newspaper Avanti. This is how he rose to fame and then became dictator of Italy. So like the ladder of promotion was like journalist, editor, dictator. And now the job...
I haven't reached the top one yet, but go ahead.
Because you're in the wrong period, you're in the wrong era.
Shoot. Oh, well.
I mean, now... The job that was once done by Lenin and Mussolini is done by algorithms. It's one of the first jobs in the world to be completely automated. And it's still, of course, the humans are still in control. They give the algorithms the goal. And as I guess most people here know, the goal given was increased user engagement.
Right.
And the algorithms, by trial and error, discovered that the easiest way to increase user engagement is spread outrage. And this is what they did. And they should be liable for that. Again, not for the content of their users.
So the idea you're talking about is, the way I boiled it down was enragement equals engagement. You know, that's the way it does, because it works. Joy also works, but it works less well than enragement, right? So which is why you get cat videos and QAnon, right? That's, essentially the two things. But one of the things, so speaking of the hammer of witches, actually, before we get to that, talk a little about what happened, in the most famous version of propaganda, which is still probably Nazi Germany, in terms of using the media, using imagery, using propaganda, because I think we use the word misinformation or disinformation when we're really talking about propaganda in the end.
But it's all part of the same kind of toolkit, because a key difference between dictatorships and democracies is that democracies work on trust, and especially trust in institutions, whereas dictatorships work on terror. So dictators, they don't really need you to believe in a particular theory, in a particular version of reality. They really need you to disbelieve everything. If they can destroy all trust between people, then the only system that can still function is a dictatorship. So, and we see it also today, and we saw it, of course, in Nazi Germany, in the Soviet Union. I mean, there is, with one hand, they try to spread a particular conspiracy theory, a particular propaganda. But with the other hand, they just try to sow distrust. And unfortunately, both historically and also today, this is not the preserve, say, of Nazis or fascists of the extreme right. We see it on the right and on the left as well. It was also something very common on the Marxist left. That and the key idea, maybe the most important idea, which is common here, is the idea that the only reality is power, and that all human relations are power struggles. This is an idea which is common on both the extreme right and the extreme left, which is corrosive of trust. It implies that all human institutions whether it's the media, whether it's science, whether it's the courts, they are just elite conspiracies to gain power. Whenever somebody tells you something, the question to ask is not, is it the truth? The question to ask is, whose privileges does it serve?
Right.
It's obviously not the truth, because nobody cares about the truth. All humans care only about power. So every time somebody says something, the only question is, who is gaining in power by this?
Speaking of that and the hammer of witches, for example, the New York Times fact-checked over 170 posts recently from Elon Musk, who owns a big communications platform now, along with the other stuff he should still be doing and not this, on X in a week, and he found that almost 1/3 were false, misleading, or missing context. His posts coincided with harassment campaigns on election officials, so basically he's using it's not a public square, it's a private square owned by the world's richest man, to burn people in his own way. So what do you think about that? How do you assess social media at the moment in its ability to self-correct? Why would it, if one rich person who has somehow lost the narrative has the ability to do this in so many ways?
So first, let's
leaving Trump aside.
Yeah, let's explain what self-correction is.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at information networks and at institutions throughout history, so a key difference is whether they have strong or weak self-correcting mechanisms. A self-correcting mechanism is something within the institution itself that constantly works to identify, to expose the mistakes of the institution or of the member of the institution and correct them. So some institutions have only weak self-correcting mechanisms. In dictatorships, they are almost non-existent. Like in Putin's Russia, there is no mechanism to identify and correct Putin's mistakes.
Well, there's no mechanism, just recently when Elon tweeted about assassination of Kamala Harris. He was like, well, it was funny to my employees, and so I thought it was funny. Which is sort of like your employees have to laugh at what you say. It felt like the same thing. So how do you, this summer the Supreme Court sidestepped whether social media should or should not, away from Musk, should or should not moderate content. Public opinion is split because of at least in this country, because of the First Amendment, and they always get mushed in there in a way that's very deceptive, I think. Conservatives think they're doing too much, progressives think too little, and proponents of less content moderation often, as I said, cite the First Amendment, but I don't think it's about free speech. It's about, as you said, algorithms. I'm going to read a bit from your book. You wrote, the information network has become so complicated, it relies to such an extent on opaque algorithmic decisions in intercomputer entities that it has become very difficult for humans to answer even the most basic of political questions. Why are we fighting each other? So talk about the impact of these unfathomable algorithms that are owned by individual people who direct them in some fashion or control them.
But there is a big question here, whether the danger is the individuals who own them, or whether the danger potentially is the algorithms themselves. And I agree that at the present moment, the people who own the technology probably pose the bigger danger. But in the long term, we have to take into account that this is the first technology in history which can potentially make decisions and invent new ideas by itself.
Right.
That AIs are agents and not tools, and therefore down the road, the main problem could be the AIs and not the human creators or the human owners.
Right, so that it becomes what it wants to do, correct?
Yeah, and like in the case of the social media algorithms, today they should know better, but at least in the beginning, the executives who gave the algorithms the task of increased user engagement, they did not anticipate what will happen. And I think that most of them definitely didn't want what happened. That the corrosion of trust and the collapse of the public conversation and the destabilization of democracy, this was not their plan.
Well, they certainly should have anticipated. It wasn't very hard to figure that out, correct? I mean, when you I was in a meeting with Facebook when they showed Facebook Live, and I said, oh, what happens when people murder each other on this thing? What happens when someone puts a GoPro on their head and does a mass murder? What happens when there's bullying, suicide? And literally the person there was like, you're a bummer, Kara Swisher. And I was like, yeah, I am. You know, like humanity has become sometimes a bummer. So how do you then self-correct that? Because the thrust of your book is about AI, and you say we're at a critical moment of canonization, that AIs will become full-fledged members of our information network. Let me read this section, because you're talking about the people are the problem now, but the algorithm itself will be, the AI algorithm
Could become the main problem down the road.
Which makes you scared, because they're doing a bad job. Humans are doing a bad job right now. But in coming years, all information networks, from armies to religions, will gain millions of new AI members, which will process data very differently than humans do. The new members will make alien decisions and generate alien ideas. That is, decisions and ideas that are unlikely to occur to humans, which is a plus for AI, for a lot of people. The addition of so many alien members is bound to change the shape of armies, religions, markets, and nations. Entire political, economic, and social systems might collapse, and new ones will take their place. That's why AI should be a matter of utmost urgency, even to people who don't care about technology and who think the most important political questions concern the survival of democracy or their fair distribution of wealth. That sounds terrifying, because people are doing a terrifically bad job right now. So talk about, you were not an optimist when it comes to AI. You know, you're saying Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk are one thing, but boy, wait till you get a load of this AI kind of thing.
I mean, first of all, it's obvious that AI also has enormous positive potential.
Sure.
Otherwise, we would not be developing it.
Right. Well, there is the money, but go ahead.
Yeah. No, but even the money, I mean, you need to sell something. I mean, it does. I mean, in many cases, people buy it because there is benefit in it. Right. Otherwise, it's difficult to sell it. But the key thing is that human societies are extremely adaptable if we give them enough time. And this is just moving too fast. We don't have time to adapt, again, to these completely new financial systems, armies, religions, which will be created by all these new AI agents.
You call them alien and not artificial intelligence. Why is that?
They are alien, not in the sense of coming from outer space, of course.
Although I can't wait till they get here and fix everything, but go ahead. Right about now, guys, get down here.
It's because, you know, artificial intelligence conveys, I think, again, a complacent and wrong idea that these things are artifacts. And people, when they think of artifacts, they think we create them, so we can control them, we can anticipate them. And the most important characteristic of AI is that you cannot really anticipate it, because it learns and changes by itself. If a machine cannot learn and change by itself, it is not an AI. It is an automatic machine. If you think about, you know, a washing machine, a coffee machine, you have lots of automatic machines which are not AI. It's only AI if it can learn and change by itself, which means that it's going to be very difficult to anticipate and to control what it's going to do.
Even though it's fueled by our own information that we've been uploading the past 2 decades, correct?
Yes, I mean, it works. I mean, it eats all the information that humans have produced, not just in the last 2 decades, in the last tens of thousands of years. If you think about AIs that produce images, so we feed them with all the images created since the cave art of 40 and 50,000 years ago. And they eat the whole of it within just a few months and then start creating new things. At the first kind of generation, it's mostly similar to what humans have produced so far. But I guess that very quickly, they will start to become more and more creative, which also means more and more alien, more and more different from human creations. Now, we have been used to living, you know, throughout history inside human culture. Like everything, all the images, all the poetry, all the financial systems, all the armies, they all came ultimately from the human imagination, from our mind. And suddenly, very quickly, we will find ourselves living inside a culture which is more and more an alien culture, coming out of the calculations and confabulations and imaginations of a non-organic entity.
Which was originally fed by us.
Which was originally fed by us the same way that we eat the plants and we eat animals, and still we can create things that plants and animals can't.
Right.
It's like you go back 3 billion years or whatever, so you have these, the atmosphere of the Earth had almost no oxygen in it. Then you had these microorganisms that polluted the atmosphere with oxygen, and this killed almost all the organisms in the world. A few of them adapted to the oxygen, and we are their descendants. But eating all this oxygen, we can still do stuff that these microorganisms from 3 billion years ago couldn't anticipate and can't understand.
So why do you assume it wants to kill it? You know, the idea is it doesn't want it. One of the things
it does what it does.
It does what it does, so we don't know what it'll do.
So again, to take something, think about the financial system. The financial system is a good example because it is the ideal playground for AIs. AIs have still a big difficulty with the messy physical, biological world. This is why every year you have these promises that next year you have all the self-driving cars on the road, and it turned out to be much more difficult because you have to deal with traffic and humans and broken roads and dogs and whatever. So it's difficult. The financial system is easy. The financial system is only data. It's data in and data out. That's it. So this is kind of AIs, this is their ideal playground.
Right.
What happens if you give AIs more and more power to make decisions and also invent new stuff in the financial
that we
system.
hadn't thought of, right? Exactly. One of the things which is really interesting is that tech people are using a term agent, co-pilot, friend, assistant, like they're lesser than, essentially, than humans, and we are completely in charge. I just recently spoke with Microsoft AI CEO Mustafa Suleyman, and they have a new word at Microsoft called agentic, which is agent. Which is
agent.
It's not a word. I don't care. I think
it's a new word they invented.
Okay, fine, but it's not. And you're ringing the bell. Talk about what you think between the thinking of AI as a tool or agent, because that's what they're leaning in on. This is we're here to help you. And it reminds me of which I always say, the Twilight Zone episode, To Serve Man. It's a cookbook, right? Like that when they came, I don't know if you ever saw it, but you should. It's a cookbook. It's not here to serve man. It's to serve man with a side of potatoes, I guess. When you talk about this idea of agentic, you're talking about something very different because they're using companion, friend, everything.
An
agent your
teacher is an entity that can make decisions by itself that you can't anticipate, and that can invent new ideas by itself that you can't anticipate, that can learn and change. So they had, for instance, this famous experiment that OpenAI did when they wanted to test GPT-4 before releasing it, and they gave it the task of solving CAPTCHA puzzles, and it couldn't solve the CAPTCHA puzzles, all these kind of strings of twisted words you need to identify.
Yeah, neither can I.
So they gave it access to the TaskRabbit online a web page where you can hire people to do things for you. And GPT-4 tried to hire a human to solve the CAPTCHA for it.
Makes
and
sense.
The interesting thing was the human got suspicious. The human worker on TaskRabbit wrote, "Why do you need help solving CAPTCHA? Are you a robot?" It directly asked, "Are you a robot?"
Wow, humans for the win, TaskRabbit.
But what happened then is that GPT-4 answered, "No, I am not a robot. I have a vision impairment, which is why I can't solve the CAPTCHA, and I need your help." And the human, this sounds reasonable, and the human did it.
Right.
Now, nobody told GPT-4 to lie, and nobody told GPT-4 what lie would be most effective. This was a very effective lie. If it was just, this glorified autocomplete, let's just take a word from here and a word from there, you wouldn't come up with such an effective lie.
Right, so it's a good
So
liar.
this is an agent.
Right.
And, you scale up. And I'll give an example from what's happening in my home country now in Israel. So there is a huge debate, I'm not sure who is correct there, about the role of AI in choosing bombing targets in Gaza. Like choosing, in the Terminator, you had the robots pulling the trigger.
Right.
But what's really happening in wars today, it's the humans pulling the trigger, but the AIs are calling the shots, literally calling the shots.
Right.
I mean, everybody that I talked with agree that at present, the AI has the capability of choosing targets,
Right.
and that it is being used to go over immense amounts of data
They are.
that no human analyst is
Ukraine
able
is
to
happening in
analyze
Ukraine, too.
and choose targets.
So is when you're because let me read you what Suleiman said. They use the word friend. They use the word companion. They're using these very lovely words for I guess the lonely humanity, but. And friend is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. He said, this is what he said to me, it's going to be your teacher, your medical advisor, your support network. Ultimately, it's going to take actions on your behalf. This is the friendly version of that. You're talking about a very unfriendly
Yeah, the
version.
target selector.
Right.
Now, again, there is a debate, and I don't know who is right, because I talked with a lot of people, and they tell you different things, and I read different reports and documents. One school of thought says that the AI goes over, again, enormous amounts of data that no human can analyze, and based on patterns in the data, says that a particular building, let's say it's Hamas headquarters, and says to the humans, bomb this building, and the humans just go ahead and bomb it.
Right.
Basically on the advice or orders of the AI. The other school of thought I've been talking to that says, no, it's not how it happens. The AI says this building is a Hamas headquarter, bomb it, and then we get the human analysts to go again over all the data.
That's the idea, whether it's radiology or that could iterate into anything.
Yes, but they all agree that the AI is key because the humans would never even think of looking at that building without the AI pointing at it.
Although you're talking about...
And this is still extremely primitive AI.
Right.
I mean, this kind of bombing AI and ChatGPT and GPT-4, this is like the amoebas of the AI world.
Right, which is what they talk about. But where do humans intercede? Because a lot of them argue to me, for example, if you said to AI, solve human hunger, right? Solve hunger around the world. The first thing it does, the first answer without the correct prompts is, we'll kill half the human race, that'll work. And that's what it will do. That was, because it makes sense, like that's what you should do, not find new crops, which it could also do. So doesn't it really depend? One of the things you had, let me read this, an AI agent in your phone has implications on a personal level. As you know, it's all in your phone, your new Apple Intelligence or whatever it's called. Right now, it just tries to rewrite emails for you, but which is irritating, because most of my emails are no and yes, and then it asks me if they want me to rewrite that, which is no, I don't. You write, the easiest way for AI to seize power is not by breaking out the Dr. Frankenstein's lab, but by ingratiating itself with some paranoid Tiberius.
Dictator, yeah.
I can think of one or two these days. What risks do you see? Talk about that, because you're talking about ingratiating
we tend to talk about AIs in the context of democracies, but dictatorships also have a huge problem with AIs. For dictators, for human dictators, the scariest thing in the world is not a democratic revolution. The scariest thing is a powerful subordinate that takes power from them, either assassinates them or manipulates them. If you think about the Roman Empire, for instance, this is the reference to Tiberius, not a single Roman emperor was ever toppled by a democratic revolution. But a very large percentage of them were either killed or toppled or manipulated by powerful subordinates. A general, a provincial governor, their wife, their son, somebody.
Right.
And this is still the #1 problem for dictators around the world. And for them to give a lot of power to an AI that can then get out of their control is very, very tricky. Because, to seize power in a democracy, it's difficult because power is distributed between many organizations, institutions. How would the AI deal with a Senate filibuster? It's difficult. But to seize power in a dictatorship, you just need to learn how to manipulate a single, very paranoid individual. And paranoid people are usually the easiest to manipulate. So if you think...
Again, I know a few.
Yeah.
So it's not just an issue for democracies. Also, dictatorships have problems. And, it starts with small things. Like if you release a chatbot to the Russian internet, how can Putin make sure that the chatbot will not tell jokes about him or criticize the invasion of Ukraine or say, call it a war, God forbid? Because in Russia, there is a law that this is not a war, this is a special military operation, and if somebody says that this is a war, they go to jail. Now, what do you do with chatbots? I mean, how do you terrorize a chatbot? Like, even if you prepare a perfectly kind of, the regime prepares its own chatbot and releases it to the Russian internet. But then the chatbot starts interacting with people, starts analyzing data, starts learning and changing. How can you prevent the chatbot from starting to say things against the regime?
So it's not good for dictatorships, but democracy, it also creates chaos. One of the selling points of the internet and social media was that it brought the world closer together. That was at the beginning, just so you're aware. Yes, we're all going to get along. If I had $1 for every time Mark Zuckerberg said community to me, I'd be very wealthy. But somehow it didn't turn out that way. You say right now diverging views on social media are actually leading to more separation, will get worse with AI. Talk about this, you called it the Silicon Curtain and data colonialism.
So this is about what might happen on the international level, not within countries, but between countries. So the two main scenarios is that you'll have the world splitting into completely different information spheres. After centuries of convergence and globalization, you will have completely, if the main metaphor in the early days of the web was the web that connects everything and community and so now the main metaphor is the cocoon. Like the web is closing in on us and we are enclosed within information cocoons and different people are inside different cocoons. And the Silicon Curtain is, of course, a reference to the Iron Curtain and to the idea that we will have entire countries or entire spheres which are in completely separate information
which we have in this country right now.
Which is developing at a very fast rate. And then a complete breakdown in communication and understanding between human beings. That you cannot agree on there is no longer a shared human reality. And the other main danger is of the rise of new digital empires and data colonialism. The same thing that happened in the 19th century with the Industrial Revolution. The few countries that industrialized first, they had then the power to conquer and dominate and exploit the rest of the world. This can happen again with AI technology.
But it doesn't have to be countries, it can be people, right?
It can be people inside the country, but I think the biggest worry is still on the international level. Some countries will become fabulously wealthy because of AI, and the US and China are the front runners here. But other countries could completely collapse. Their economy could completely collapse, and they will not have the resources to retrain the workforce, to rebuild, to adapt to the new AI economy. So we can have a repeat of the imperialist drive of the 19th century, and this time centered around data. To control a country from afar, you will no longer need to send in the soldiers and gunboats and machine guns. You will basically just need to take out the data. If you have all the data of a country, you have all the data of every journalist, every politician, every military officer, and you also control the attention of the people in that country. You control what they see, what they hear. You don't need to send in the soldier. This has become a data colony.
So before we go, we're going to get to questions in just a second. I want to talk about regulation. You've been advocating for AI regulation for a while, so have I. Last year you signed the open letter causing for a pause, which very nice, but it didn't happen, just FYI.
Nobody really expected it.
No, it did not. And OpenAI is raising $150 billion. A valuation of $150 billion. They're raising $6 billion. lots of people in Silicon Valley signed it and then started their own thing. I think of one or two people. You didn't. Here in California, Gavin Newsom recently vetoed a bill that would have been the first legislation in the nation to put up AI guardrails. It was a problematic bill. It was somewhat unspecific, but it required safety testing. It mandated a kill switch, turn off AI systems. And many who criticized it said it was focused too much on frontier models. And then Stanford professor Fei-Fei Li, who was one of the early AI people, also warned that it would disadvantage smaller developers. And they're trying to rewrite it, but there's almost no regulation anywhere, and there's no global regulation. There's some of banning bots, deep fakes people are talking about. What do you see as the regulatory scheme work here to do this? Because we haven't been able to do the last one.
Yeah.
Not one.
So I think that there are three things I can say. I mean, there are two regulations which should be obvious. One is that corporations should be liable for the actions of their algorithms. You developed it, you deployed it, you're liable, like with cars, like with medicines, like with food. I agree. The other is that you should ban counterfeit humans. AIs and bots are welcome to interact with us only if they identify as AIs.
So transparency.
Yes.
Right.
But, I mean, it's going to be impossible to just regulate AI in advance because, again, it's an agent, because it learns and changes very, very rapidly. The only thing that can work is to create living institutions, not kind of dead regulations that are written in books, but living institutions staffed by at least some of the best talent on the planet and with enough budget to understand what is happening and to react on the fly. And again, before we even get to regulation, the first step is observation. We need eyes before teeth. Like most people, even in this country, hardly understand what is happening and why is it dangerous. If you go to the rest of the world, to the countries which might end up as data colonies, they are even in a worse situation. Right. Because they have to rely on what the American or the Chinese companies or governments tell them. So what we need urgently is an international institution, again, with the best talent and with enough budget to simply tell people what is happening and what are the dangers. And now we can discuss what regulations...
Almost like a nuclear regulatory commission is kind of what you're talking about, right? Like,
but again, with nukes, it was relatively easy to understand the danger.
Right.
With AI, it's a very rapidly developing
because there's
technology.
Positives to it. The Surgeon General talked about this. There's never been technology that's both positive and possibly devastating to humanity. So my last two questions. You say also that unsupervised algorithms should be banned from curating public debates.
Yeah, absolutely.
People do such a good job at it already.
I would trust the humans more than we have thousands of years of experience with humans. We don't have experience with AIs. I mean, in the tech world, I often hear the opposite argument. We have thousands of years of experience with humans. We know we can't trust them. The AIs, we don't know, so maybe they'll be good.
Yeah.
And that's a huge, huge gamble.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to finish on this. You write, you said the survival of democracies depends on their ability to regulate the information market, which we have not done at all. Like, at all.
Yeah.
Not one. I was just recently on a CNN debate with this guy who was a Trump spokesmodel, really, because he didn't know anything. I said, how many laws are regulating the internet and free speech? Because he was going on about free speech, and he goes, hundreds. And I said, 0, but you're close. You know, so you note the decisions we make in the coming years will determine whether summoning this alien intelligence proves to be a terminal error or the beginning of a hopeful new chapter of the evolution of life. You have it both ways there, I see. So before we go, what's your worst case scenario and what's your best case scenario?
Ooh, you know, the worst case scenario is that AI destroys not just human civilization, but, you know, the very light of consciousness. That AIs are highly intelligent, but they are non-conscious entities, at least so far.
Right.
And we could have a scenario that they take over these non-organic highly intelligent entities take over the planet, even spread from this planet to the rest of the galaxy, but it's a completely dark universe. That consciousness, I mean, the ability to feel things like love and hate and pain and pleasure, this could be completely gone. So this is like, it's not a very high probability, but there is some probability.
So we'll call that the Thanos version, but go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And
that's the worst case scenario.
Okay, what's the best one?
The best case scenario is that we are able to harness the immense positive potential of AI, in healthcare, in solving climate change, in education. And the key is knowing which problems to solve. One of the key problems of humanity throughout history, and you see it in particular in Silicon Valley, is that we rush to solve problems, we do a tremendous job, and then we realize we solved the wrong problem because we did not spend enough time on just understanding what the problem is. And, we now have this fabulous technology to say unimportant things to people we don't care about. And we still don't know how to say the most important things to the people we most love, we most care about. So it happens again and again in history.
Right.
That we are so wise when it comes to, finding the technical solutions, but we just don't spend enough time on choosing the right problems to solve.
Right, absolutely. You don't use emojis then, I guess. You ever heard of Genmojis?
Of what?
Genmojis.
No.
This is an Apple thing. You can generate any emoji you want.
Oh, like a face.
Anything.
Okay.
You just describe it and the emoji's generated. All right, we're going to get to questions from the audience. Think about your Genmoji, what you want to make, and waste your time doing that. Well, the machines take over and kill us, I guess. That's where we're going. Are you a positive person or a negative person? What would you say?
I try to be a realist.
Right. Well, you're a historian. As a historian,
I'm a historian, yeah.
As a historian, are you positive or negative?
I know a lot of terrible things that humans have done.
Yeah.
But I also am familiar with a lot of very good things that humans have done. We've managed to shift from a situation when we can only trust, say, 50 other people in the band, like this small hunter-gatherer band, to a situation when we can now trust, to some extent, hundreds of millions and even of billions of people in a country or all over the world. The food we eat, almost all of it, is grown and produced by complete strangers on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
So this is really remarkable.
Yeah.
So it's not only bad news. Again, in this discussion, who should you trust more, the AIs or the humans? I think, yes, we have thousands of years of experience with humans, and we've actually made some significant progress in building trust between humans. So this is why I think we are still better gamble on the humans and not on the AIs.
Okay. All right, so questions from the audience? We'll talk about a couple of them. All right, I guess you put your hand out, is that correct? Are you guys, where's the people with the...
Hello, we have a question from the balcony on your right.
Okay, it's hard to see, but go ahead.
Hi, thanks for coming. I really enjoyed Sapiens, and there was one particular part that gave me pause, if I could read it. It's, you say, cognitive dissonance is often considered a failure of the human psyche. In fact, it is a vital asset. Had people been unable to hold contradictory beliefs and values, it probably would have been impossible to establish and maintain any human culture. So I agreed with almost everything in Sapiens, and this one idea, it just completely flabbergasted me. It's the exact opposite of what I believe. And I was wondering, this was written a while ago, I was wondering if the political experience, especially in this country, if you've updated your opinion, or if you could elaborate. Thanks so much.
Great question.
So just to explain the idea that the reality is so complicated that to come up with a theory, a model that just explains everything in a perfect way is impossible for humans. So if you look at any culture, if you look at any ideology, any religion, there are always these contradictions inside them. And if we could not, to some extent, live with the contradictions, we could not have cultures and ideologies and religions and financial systems and states and so forth. The question is, what do we do with them?
And I think the positive side is to acknowledge these contradictions and use them as fuel to think further, to explore further. What is really dangerous, I find, is the kind of fanaticism that sees only half of reality, or only half of you shut down half your brain or one eye, and you just don't acknowledge part of reality because of the inability to deal with the cognitive dissonance. Mm-hmm. And this usually leads to the greatest crimes in history. It's not a matter of, it could be secular ideologies like communism, it could be religious ideologies. If you have some kind, if you're comfortable with exploring the cognitive dissonance, I think you'll be okay. But if you go in the kind of fanatical direction, I'll just have this one idea, one key unlocks all the problems in the world, this tends to be the most dangerous.
Okay, next question.
This question is all the way to your right in the orchestra.
Okay, right here. Got it. I see you.
Hello. I have a question. So you talked a lot about technology companies, regulation, specific people. Could you talk a little bit more about the individual responsibility? So the analogy that I have in my mind, so information is like food. It's very easy for people who are obese, who drive the car every day, get the bad food, to blame the government, blame the regulations, the quality of the food. Mm-hmm. While the answer there is, of course, in regulation, but there is something that individuals have to do to complement that.
Sure.
And in the public discourse, there is not so much information about what we as individuals need to, how do we live with this going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, the only thing, can I say, there are no regulations. So it's not, we're either getting tainted meat or not. And so in life, that doesn't happen. That's just one thing, is we don't get signals from the government.
Not enough. I mean, first of all, again, the number one responsibility is not on the individuals. I mean, these are extremely powerful and complex systems, and we shouldn't play. It's like with climate change, that yes, each individual should do their part, but ultimately it's a trick by the big corporations to kind of shift the blame and do a kind of guilt game. Oh, everybody is guilty, and you go home and feel guilty for what you did and leave us out of it. So the number one responsibility is first on the government and on the big corporations. But of course, individuals have the responsibility, at least in their own life, and I really like the analogy with food. And I basically, agree that everybody should go on an information diet. That the same way that with food, a century ago, food was scarce, people would eat whatever they could get, and especially if lots of sugar and fat in it, that's good, lots of energy. Now food in many places around the world is super abundant. You have all this industrially produced junk food, which is deliberately pumped full of fat and sugar and salt to make it addictive. And people have, at least many of us have understood this is not good for us, and we need an information diet, and we need a food diet. And it's the same with information. Once it was scarce, we consumed anything we could get, the only book in the village. Now it's super abundant. You have all this junk information around. So the idea that more information is always good for you, this is nonsense. We need time to digest information, and we need time also to detoxify the mind from all the junk information that we put in there.
It's also addictive and necessary. It's two things at once. It's designed to be addictive by the people who designed it and the algorithms, and then it's also, you can't live without it because you can't do your job. So you can't put it down ever.
Yeah, again, I'm not saying completely cut yourself off,
right.
But each person in their life should think about what is my information diet, and how could I improve it, both in terms of quantity, and for most people it means consuming less information. And again, consuming less information and going on an information fast every now and then means I have more time to digest and to detoxify the information I already consumed. And also be more mindful
about the type of information that you put inside your mind.
Right.
So absolutely.
Okay. Time for, I think, 2 more questions. Where is the person?
This next question comes from the balcony in the center.
Okay. All right, right there. I see you.
Thank you. I read about the vacillation in capabilities between platform AIs and individually controlled AIs that might even run on a gaming computer, say.
Mm-hmm.
What's that going to look like moving forward if individuals or affiliation groups can control their own agents? And what are the implications? Will it just amplify their tribal, they'll incentivize it to say, give me QAnon?
Mm-hmm.
Or will they, and what would it look like to say, give me the truth?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, with regard to give me the truth, the expectation that AI will give us the truth is unlikely to be realized. Again, because most information is not the truth. AI is simply likely to create, it won't tell us the truth about this world, it will create a new and much more complicated and much more difficult to understand world. And again, I know that immigration is on the mind of a lot of people in the United States and other countries around the world today. And people are worried we'll have all these immigrants in, and they will take some of the jobs, and they will have all these kind of different ideas about how to do things. How can we manage? How can society manage? So whatever you think about human immigration, this is a good model to think about the AI revolution. What we are talking about is the immigration of millions and maybe billions of agents into society, taking up a lot of jobs, and they will not necessarily start with, again, the taxi drivers. They may start with the editors and the bankers and the screenwriters and the producers.
That's exactly where they're starting.
They will take the kind of most important jobs first, or the generals in the army. And they will have different ideas about how to manage society. And some of them could become your friends. One thing we haven't discussed is this new abilities of AIs to fake intimacy with people. I mean, if previously the big issue with social media was the battle for attention, you had these algorithms very capable in grabbing human attention. The new generation of AIs, they can go far beyond attention, they can go to intimacy. For the first time in history, it would be possible to create mass intimacy, which is a contradictory idea, which was never possible before. You know, like Hitler's propaganda machine, it was good at attention. You could force every German family to listen on the radio to the speech by the great leader, but this did not create intimacy. Now, with the new generation of AI, you could mass produce intimacy. So maybe some of your best friends will be AIs. And they will influence the way you think. And again, before we even get to the discussion, optimism, pessimism, is it good, is it bad, it's just radically different from anything
and
we've
we have to
seen
understand
before
what
in
it could do. Okay. One more question. I'd like it to be a woman, please. 3 guys, that's enough. I have 3 sons. Love them, but I love my daughter too. So let's have a woman.
This question is all the way in the back, middle of the orchestra.
Okay, as long as it's a lady.
I'm sorry, I'm a man.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude, but we only have a few minutes.
Let's
Apologies.
give it to a woman.
Where? I apologize. I'm just going to overrule you. So
that's okay.
Okay, over here, wherever you can find, whoever's doing the picking is going to have to talk to me afterwards. Okay, thank you. Again, I have 3 sons, love them, but it's time for my daughter. Go.
Wow, thank you. Okay, I wrote this down because I'm a little shy about this. Would you agree that Europe has a lower tolerance for fake news and holds media professionals to a higher standard than the US, who is often criticized for the systemic spread of misinformation? If so, how do you think we can hold the media accountable and combat misinformation? Should there be rules that prevent certain news outlets from labeling themselves as news if they don't adhere to specific standards? Shouldn't there be requirements such as you're not allowed to tell more than 5% of verified BS?
Well, that would be great.
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, part of what is happening is the erasure of borders between, the private space and public space. People don't know if what they say, if they are saying it in private or in public. Similarly, the erasure of the border between news and entertainment. And, if you want to be a news channel, you have to live up to certain standards. And if you don't want to, then just define yourself as entertainment. But as long as people understand what they are consuming. And we don't have that. With regard to Europe and the US, it's not my expertise, I'm not sure. But I would say that, I hear a lot of people say that Europe has too many regulations, and this is bad for business. This is bad for the development of the technology. So how would it help you if you have all the regulations, but all the companies are elsewhere? So you're self-destructing. This is what they often tell to the Europeans. And I think this is inaccurate, because regulation and safety is not bad for business. If you want to put a car on the road, people want a safe car. If you have good safety regulations, this is not bad for the business of car production. If you think about, the COVID and the vaccines. So if you have a choice between a Russian vaccine and a German vaccine, most people would go for the German vaccine.
Right.
Because there are a lot more regulations that you can trust in Germany about how you produce vaccines and medicines and so forth than in Russia. So in many areas, this kind of binary choice, you have to choose. Either you have regulations or you have an economy. This is just not true.
It is, absolutely. You're right. 100. But that's one of the biggest tropes of Silicon Valley. And with regards to media actually has regulations attached to it. They get sued. Look at what happened to Fox and Smartmatic. There is a price, and the problem is there's no price. All right, I'm going to ask the last question. I'm sorry, we've got to go. They're telling me we have to go. But I have one more question. So with Sapiens, you became, like every tech bro was a fanboy of you, like crazy. I was like, have you talked to Yuval? Do you know what Yuval said? I'm like, no, I took an anthropology course in college, unlike you, so I did know a lot of this stuff. But they were thrilled, and you really did find a way to get them relatively educated, not very, about some stuff. So they loved you, like couldn't stop talking about you. You know that, right? They were your biggest fanboys. This is critical.
Yeah.
What are they saying about, they don't like me anymore. I mean, they never did, but what are they?
It's just out. We'll wait and see.
What do you think?
I think they will like it less than Sapiens, but again, I think maybe I'm less critical than you are of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think many of them, not
you
all of them.
You haven't met them yet, but go ahead.
I've met some of them, and many of them are really deeply concerned about it.
They are,
because they understand almost better than anybody else what they are creating, and they are very concerned. They don't know how to stop. Again, they have this basic argument that most of them, not all of them, we would like to slow down. We realize it's dangerous. We would like to give human society more time to think about it, more time to develop the safety mechanisms, but we can't stop, we can't slow down. They will say, we are the good guys. If we slow down, the bad guys in the other company or in the other country will not slow down, and then the bad guys will win the race and take over the world, so we must do it first.
Right, but that's sort of the Xi or me argument that Mark Zuckerberg's often made. Like, it's either Xi or us, and I'm like, is that my choice? Is there another? Is there choice?
I mean, I think there are more choices, but I also think this is a serious argument. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't think they are kind of Hollywood science fiction villains, just Dr. Evil out to take over the world. No. So I think that they would appreciate to some extent, a deep and meaningful conversation about it. They have their opinions, but I wouldn't write them off so quickly and so easily.
All right, on that note, Yuval Harari, it's a great book.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's great.
Thank you.